Hey guys, tonight we are taking a one-way trip. Not to a tropical resort, but to the other side of the world in chains. We're going to dive headfirst into the grimy, rain-slicked cobblestones of 18th century London, and from there, onto a ship that's more of a floating coffin than a vessel of discovery. And fair warning, you'll survive a lot on this particular trip. Well, let's just say they're not exactly in your favor, but hey, no pressure. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's a damp, bone-deep cold that seeps through the threadbare wool of your shawl and seems to cling to your very marrow. It's the permanent state of being here, in the sprawling, chaotic guts of London. The air is a thick soup of smells, the sweet, cloying scent of cheap gin from the tavern on the corner, the bitter tang of coal smoke hanging heavy in the fog, the ever-present stench of the open sewer that runs down the middle of the street, and underneath it all, the smell of too many unwashed bodies crammed into too little space. You pull the shawl tighter around yourself, but it's useless. You've been on your own for weeks, ever since your position as a laundress for a wealthy family ended abruptly. A misplaced lace collar, they said. A flimsy excuse. Now, the meager savings you had are gone, and your stomach is a hollow, aching void. Hunger is a constant, droning companion. It makes the world swim a little at the edges and sharpens your senses to the sight and smell of food. You watch a portly merchant tear into a meat pie, grease dripping down his chin, and you feel a surge of something hot and bitter in your throat. It's in this haze of cold and hunger that the idea, a dangerous little spark, takes root. You've walked past the draper's shop on Cheapside 100 times, admiring the bolts of printed calico and fine wool displayed in the window. The fabrics are a riot of color in this overwhelmingly grey world. They represent a life so far removed from yours it might as well be on the moon. But today you don't see beauty. You see value. You see a bolt of cloth not as a dress, but as a week's worth of bread, a month's rent for a tiny room, a brief respite from this gnawing desperation. You know the risks. Everyone knows the risks. They call it the bloody code, the web of laws that can send a person to the gallows for what seems like nothing. Stealing a horse, poaching a rabbit, or taking goods worth more than a few shillings could earn you a dance at the end of a rope. But the gallows feel distant, an abstract horror, while the hunger is right here, right now, twisting your insides. You linger near the shop, feigning interest in a display of ribbons. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. Your plan, if you can call it that, is laughably simple. Wait for the shopkeeper to be distracted, snatch a small bolt of cloth from the barrel near the door, and melt back into the crowd. You're not a hardened criminal from the rookeries of street. Giles, you're just a girl whose luck has run out. The moment comes. A wealthy lady in a carriage argues with the shopkeeper about the price of French lace. His back is turned. It's now or never. You dart forward, your hand closing not around the small, plain bolt you'd intended, but a larger one of brightly colored, foil-printed calico. It's smoother, heavier than you expected. For a split second, you're frozen, mesmerized by its impossible cheerfulness. Then, you turn and run. You don't get far. Your worn-out shoes have no purchase on the slick, muddy cobblestones. You hear a shout, "Stop, thief!" and the sound of running feet behind you. Panic makes your legs clumsy. You stumble, catching your foot on a loose stone, and go down hard. The beautiful bolt of calico spills out of your grasp and unrolls into the filthy street, its vibrant pattern immediately sullied by the mud and grime. A heavy hand grabs the scruff of your neck and hauls you to your feet. It's the shopkeeper, his face purple with rage. "This one," he bellows to the gathering crowd, "tried to make off with my finest Indian calico, worth mere 20 shillings it is. 20 shillings. The number hangs in the air, a death sentence. And here's a little, cruel piece of 18th century legal absurdity. The perceived value of the stolen item was everything. Steal something worth less than a shilling, and you might get away with a branding or a public whipping. Steal something valued at more than that, and you were in the territory of capital punishment. Historians still debate whether shopkeepers and victims deliberately inflated the value of stolen goods out of pure vindictiveness, or if it was just a chaotic system with no real standards. But in this moment, his word is everything. Your fate is being sealed by an angry man's exaggerated claim over a piece of soiled fabric. As you're dragged away by a parish constable, you catch a last glimpse of the ruined calico in the mud. The journey you thought it would buy you was one of survival. Instead, it's become a one-way ticket to a place far darker than you could ever have imagined. The process has begun. You are no longer just a hungry girl. You are a criminal, a transportee in the making. The cold you felt before was nothing compared to the ice flooding your veins now. The courtroom is a theater of noise and smells. The air, even thicker and more foul than on the street, is a putrid cocktail of stale sweat, unwashed wigs, and the faint, unsettling scent of fear. It's packed to the rafters with a jeering, gossiping public who've come for the day's entertainment. For them, this is better than a bear baiting. This is real human drama served up raw. You stand in the defendant's dock, a wooden cage really, feeling small and exposed under the gaze of hundreds of eyes. Your trial is a blur. A farce, more like. You don't have a lawyer, people of your class don't get such luxuries. The shopkeeper gives his testimony, his voice booming with self-righteous indignation. He holds up the now clean bolt of calico, a damningly bright splash of color in the drab courtroom. He swears on the Bible its value is well over the fatal threshold. A few other witnesses, people you vaguely recognize from the marketplace, nod in agreement. What else would they do? Contradicting a man of property could only bring trouble. When it's your turn to speak, your voice is a reedy whisper. You try to explain the hunger, the cold, the desperation that felt like a physical force pushing you forward. But the words catch in your throat, and they sound feeble and pathetic even to your own ears. The bewitched judge, a man whose face is a mask of jaded indifference, barely looks at you. H.S. heard this story, or variations of it, 1,000 times. To him, you are not a pistic, another number in the day's docket, another piece of social refuse to be tiddied away. The verdict is a foregone conclusion. Guilty. The word echoes in the sudden silence of the room. A tremor runs through you, a cold dread that has nothing to do with the temperature. This is it, the gallows, the hanging tree at Tyburn. You've seen the grim processions pass by, the condemned riding in a cart, sometimes drunk, sometimes defiant, sometimes weeping, on their way to the final spectacle. You squeeze your eyes shut, bracing for the sentence. But the judge says something else. He leans forward, his voice dry as rustling paper. Given your youth, and the fact that this appears to be your first significant offense, he intones the crown in its infinite mercy, sees fit to commute the ultimate penalty. A breath you didn't know you were holding escapes your lips in a shaky sigh. You are not going to hang. Relief, dizzying and absolute, washes over you. But the judge isn't finished. Instead, he continues, his gaze sweeping over you with mild distaste. You are to be transported, 7 years, to the colony of New South Wales. Transported New South Wales, the names mean nothing to you. You look around in confusion. The people in the gallery are murmuring. You hear whispers of Dosney Bay. It's a place on the other side of the world. A place people are sent and never heard from again. It's the Crown's new solution for its overflowing prisons and hulks. Too many criminals, not enough space, and a burgeoning empire without the consent of those being sent, which would ultimately ship over 160,000 convicts to Australia, was presented as an enlightened alternative to execution. A second chance, a royal mercy. But as you stand there, the initial wave of relief begins to recede, replaced by a new and unfamiliar kind of fear. The gallows were a known horror, a swift and public end. This transportation is a plunge into the unknown. 7 years. An eternity. Where even is this place what will happen to you there? The judge speaks of it as an act of clemency, a humane gesture. But looking at the grim faces of the constables who come to lead you away, you sense the lie. This isn't mercy, more drawn-out form of destruction. It's a way to remove you, to make you disappear so thoroughly that you might as well be dead. One of the fascinating undebated aspects of this system is whether the judges truly believed transportation was a kind of fate. Some historical accounts suggest they genuinely saw it as a reformative measure, a way to give offenders a clean slate in a new land. Others argue it was a purely pragmatic and deeply cynical way to deal with a social problem while simultaneously populating a new colony with disposable labor. For the politicians and lawmakers in London, you were a solution. Standing in the dock, you were just a girl whose world had ended, only to be replaced by a terrifying question mark. As they led you from the courtroom, back down into the darkness beneath the Old Bailey, you clutched at this strange new sentence. Transported. You rolled the word around in your mind. It sounds almost grand, like something from a storybook, an adventure. But the reality begins to dawn on you cold and hard. You have been spared death only to be sentenced to a living one. You haven't been given a second chance, your first one has simply been stoned in a more elaborate way. The journey unimaginable. The only thing you know for sure is that you will never see London, its filthy, vibrant, familiar streets, ever again. The journey to New South Wales doesn't begin on a ship. It begins in a place that feels like the very bowels of the earth, Newgate Prison. The moment the heavy, iron-studded door clangs shut behind you, the air changes. The relatively open, chaotic squalor of the courtroom is replaced by a concentrated, suffocating filth. Newgate is a name whispered with dread on the streets of London, a legendary pit of human misery, and now it is your home. You are shoved into the women's ward, a large, cavernous stone room already teeming with bodies. The sheer number of women crammed into the space is the first shock. They are everywhere, lying on thin, lice-infested straw pallets, huddled in corners, gambling with dice made from old bread, or arguing in harsh, guttural tones. The noise is a constant, overwhelming assault, a cacophony of coughing, weeping, shouting, and the hollow, metallic rattle of chains. A heavy iron ring is hammered onto your ankle, linked by a thick chain to another ring on your waist. The weight is immense, a constant, galling reminder of your status. It chafes your skin raw and makes every movement a deliberate, clanking effort. The smell is indescribable, a physical presence that you have to push through. It's the stench of unwashed bodies, stale urine, sickness, and despair, all trapped within stone walls where no fresh air has circulated for what feels like centuries. The only light filters down from a couple of high, barred windows, casting long, gloomy shadows that seem to swallow everything. In this perpetual twilight, it's hard to tell day from night. Your fellow prisoners are a mix of all ages and types. There are old, hardened criminals with faces like cracked leather, their eyes holding a glint of predatory cunning. There are young girls, even younger than you, who look bewildered and terrified, fresh-faced lambs tossed into a den of wolves. Some are here for murder, others for pickpocketing, and many, like you, for a single, desperate act of theft. Here in Newgate, your crime doesn't matter. All that matters is your ability to survive this brutal new ecosystem. You learn the rules quickly. Everything has a price. The jailers or turnkeys are corrupt beyond measure. They control access to everything from a marginally cleaner patch of straw to an extra ladle of the thin, greasy gruel that passes for food. If you have a money or something to trade, you can buy small comforts. If you don't, you get nothing. The prisoners have their own hierarchy too. They tougheners have their own hierarchy too. A tough-looking woman with a scarred face, who everyone calls Mole, seems to run this particular corner of hell. She and her cronies take what they want: food, blankets, any small trinket a new arrival might have foolishly held on to. You learn to make yourself small, to be invisible, to watch and listen before you speak or move. One of the more bizarre realities of Newgate, and a point of much historical fascination, was the concept of garnish. It was essentially an extortion fee demanded by the established prisoners from any newcomer. If you couldn't pay the garnish, often in the form of coins or gin, you would be subjected to a ritual of humiliation and abuse. Your clothes might be stripped, your meager belongings stolen, and you'd be ostracized until you could somehow pay your dues. It was a cruel, formalized system of bullying, tacitly allowed by the jailers because it maintained a twisted sort of order. Thankfully, you have nothing, which in a strange way makes you less of a target. You are already at the bottom. Days blur into a monotonous cycle of hunger, fear, and boredom. You spend hours just sitting on your patch of filthy straw, the weight of your chains a constant taking your bones. You listen to the stories of the other women. They talk of their crimes with a strange mixture of pride and regret. They speak of the world outside, of families they'll never see again, of the men who betrayed them or the bad luck that led them here. And they talk of Botany Bay. Their talk is a mix of wild rumor and terrified speculation. Some say it's a land of black skinned savages who eat people. Others say it's a paradise, a place where you can get rich quick. No one really knows. The only certainty is that a ship will come for you eventually. Sickness is rampant. The persistent costs you are the sound of gale fever, typhus, a disease spread by the lice that infest every inch of the prison. You see women sicken, their skin growing hot, their minds becoming delirious. They are usually just left on their pallets to either recover or die. There is no doctor, no medicine, only the grim, indifferent process of nature. Every morning you wake up and check your own body for the telltale signs of fever, a new daily ritual of terror. Historians are still divided on the exact purpose of this pre-transportation imprisonment. Was it merely a holding pen, a logistical necessity while the transport ships were being provisioned, or was it an intentional part of the punishment? A way to break the convicts, to strip them of their spirit before the long voyage even began. Either way, it works. The woman you were just a few weeks ago, the girl who worried about a lost job and a hungry stomach, is gone, replacing her with something harder, more calloused. You learn not to cry because tears are a sign of weakness. You learn to eat the foul food without gagging because starvation is worse. You learn to sleep in a constant state of alert. One hand on the small piece of stale bread you've saved, your only possession in the world. You are being unmade, piece by piece, remade into something fit for the floating hell that awaits you. The day you leave Newgate arrives without warning. One morning, the turnkeys stomp in, their voices louder and harsher than usual. They read a list of names, and yours is on it. A jolt, sharp and electric, goes through you. It's a feeling somewhere between terror and a strange, desperate kind of excitement. Anything, even the unknown, feels better than rotting in this stone tomb for one more day. You and about 30 other women whose names were called are herded out of the main ward and into a small, cold courtyard. The sudden exposure to open sky, even the smoggy, grey slice of it visible above the prison walls, makes you dizzy. For a moment, you just stand there, blinking in the pale light, breathing air that doesn't taste of sickness and despair. It's the freshest air you've breathed in months, and it feels like a luxury. But there's no time to acclimatize. The turnkeys are rough and impatient. They check your chains, giving them a hard tug that sends a jolt of pain up your leg. Then, the main gates of Newgate, the ones you never thought you'd pass through again, creak open. You are not being set free. You are simply being moved from one prison to another. Waiting outside are several open-backed carts, the kind used for hauling manure or produce. This is your transport to the docks. You and the other women are prodded and shipped into the carts, forced to stand packed tightly together. There's no room to sit, barely enough to breathe. As the carts lurch forward, pulled by weary-looking horses, you grab on to the wooden side for balance, the rough splinters digging into your fingers. And then the parade begins. The route from Newgate to the wharves on the Thames is a public one, and your journey is a spectacle. People line the streets as if for a festival. They've come to see you, to mock you. The moment your procession is spotted, the jeering starts. It's a wave of sound that washes over the carts. Men, women, and even children shout insults, their faces twisted in scorn and amusement. Thieving whores. One man screams, his voice thick with gin. Enjoy the trip to hell. Another one bellows, laughing. They don't just use words. A shower of filth rains down on you. People throw rotten vegetables, mud, animal dung, and anything else foul they can scoop from the gutters. You try to shrink back, to shield your face with your arms, but it's impossible. A soggy, rotten cabbage hits the woman next to you with a wet smack. She curses, trying to wipe the slime from her hair, but it only smears the filth. You feel something wet and disgusting hit your own cheek. You flinch, but you don't make a sound. You've learned in Newgate that showing a reaction only encourages the tormentors. You set your jaw and stare straight ahead, focusing on a crack in the wooden cart, trying to transport your mind somewhere anywhere else. This public shaming was an integral, deliberate part of the punishment. It was a final performance of justice for the citizens of London, a reinforcement of social order. It served as a warning. This is what happens to those who step out of line. For the authorities, it was a display of power. For the crowds, it was a cathartic release. The childs, it was a cathartic release, a chance to vent their own frustrations on a sanctioned target. For you, it's the deepest humiliation you have ever known. Stripped of the last shreds of your dignity while your fellow citizens cheer. What historians still debate is the psychological impact of this specific ritual. Did it break the convicts as intended, filling them with shame and making them more compliant for the voyage, or did it have the opposite effect, hardening their hearts and fostering a deep, simmering resentment against the society that was so viciously casting them out? As you stand in the cart, enduring the verbal and physical assault, you feel a profound, bottomless shame that makes you want to dissolve into nothing. But beneath it, a tiny, hard kernel of anger is forming. An anger at the shopkeeper, the judge, the guards, and now at these ordinary people whose faces are filled with such gleeful cruelty. You risk a glance at your fellow prisoners. Some are weeping silently, tears tracking clean paths through the grime on their faces. Others, like the scarred woman Mole from your ward, are shouting back, trading curses with the crowd, their faces contorted with a defiant rage. You are somewhere in between, frozen in a silent endurance. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the smell of the air changes again. The familiar city stench is overpowered by the damp, salty, slightly fishy smell of the river. The noise of the crowd is joined by the sounds of the docks, the creaking of ropes, the shouting of sailors, the cry of gulls. The carts rumble to a stop at the edge of a busy wharf on the River Thames. Moored there, massive and indifferent, is a ship. Its tall masts seem to scratch at the grey sky. This must be it. This is the vessel that will take you away from this life, from this country, forever. The sight of it is both terrifying and, in a strange way, a relief. The parade is over, but the real journey is just about to begin. The ship looms over the wharf, larger than any building you've ever been in. It's a tangle of wood, rope, and canvas, a self-contained world humming with a chaotic energy. Sailors with weathered faces and tar-stained hands swarm over its decks and rigging, shouting to each other in a language of the sea you don't understand. The ship has a name painted on its stern, but the letters are faded and you can't quite make them out. It doesn't matter. To you, its name is simply Escape or Doom. You haven't decided which yet. Its size is a paradox. From the wharf, it looks majestic, a powerful symbol of Britain's dominion over the waves. You see the captain's quarters at the stern with their neat glass windows promising light and air. You see the quarterdeck, where officers in smart blue coats stand observing the proceedings with an air of detached authority. The ship represents a world of order, discipline, and grand purpose, the very world that has condemned and rejected you, come to sweep you away like so much dust. But you know, with a cold certainty, that this grand vessel is not for you. Your place is not on those open, windswept decks. Your place is in its belly, in the dark, hidden spaces below the waterline. As you and the other women are prodded out of the carts and onto the wharf, the sheer contrast between the ship's proud exterior and your own miserable state is staggering. You are filthy from the public procession. Your clothes are rags, and the chains on your ankles clank with every shuffling step. You are a piece of human cargo, about to be loaded. A man with a clipboard and a weary expression, likely a clerk from the transport office, begins a roll call. As each woman's name is called, she shuffles forward. You wait for your name, your eyes fixed on the gangplank leading up to the ship. It looks so narrow, so steep. It's a bridge between your old world and your new one, and crossing it feels like a final, irrevocable step. When your name is called, you move forward, your legs stiff and clumsy in their irons. A guard gives you a shove toward the gangplank. The wood is slick with river damp. You place one foot on it. Then the other, your knuckles white as you grip the rough rope railing. As you ascend, the sounds of London, the city that was your entire world, begin to fade behind you, replaced by the immediate, overwhelming reality of the ship. The deck is a controlled chaos of shouting men, coiling ropes, and stacked crates. The smell of tar, brine, and damp wood is overpowering. No one pays you much mind. You are just part of the inventory. You are directed toward a gaping black hole in the middle of the deck, a hatchway with a steep ladder leading down into the darkness. This is the entrance to your new home. The descent is terrifying. The ladder is almost vertical, its rungs narrow and slippery. Your chains are a constant hindrance, catching on the rungs and threatening to throw you off balance. The fear of falling into the blackness below. Issawa behind you gives you a rough nudge. Get on behind you gives you a rough nudge. Get on with it. Get on with it. He barks, impatient. You take a deep breath and start the slow, awkward climb down, your heart pounding with each step. Here lies a fascinating, often overlooked detail of these transport ships, their dual nature. These weren't purpose-built prison ships, at least not in the early days. They were often repurposed merchant vessels or former naval ships. The same hull that was now being filled with convicts might on a previous voyage have carried tea from China, sugar from the Caribbean, or even soldiers heading to a foreign war. History is layered, and you are literally descending through those layers. The space you are about to inhabit was designed for cargo, not for people, and the ship's owners were paid by the head for each convict they were contracted to transport, creating a perverse incentive to cram as many bodies into the hull as possible, often with little regard for their survival. The government outsourced the logistics, and with it, much of the responsibility. As your feet finally touch the floor of the level below, you wait for your eyes to adjust to the gloom. The air is already thick and stagnant, a foreshadowing of what's to come. You are not yet in your final quarters. This is just a lower deck, a sort of processing area. From here, you are led toward another, even smaller hatch, leading further down into the ship's gut. This is the entrance to the prison deck. A guard unlocks a heavy barred door, and you are shoved through it. The door slams shut behind you with a sound of utter finality. The faint light from the upper decks is now almost completely gone. This is it. The floating hell you'd heard whispers of in Newgate. You've seen its proud exterior, and now you are standing in its dark, secret heart. The contrast is complete. The ship is not a vessel of adventure. It's a cage, and you've just been locked inside. You stumble into the space that will be your world for the next 8 months. The term room or cabin doesn't apply here. It is the orlop deck, the lowest deck in the ship, a place that sits below the waterline. It's a long, low-ceiling cavern of wood, curving with the shape of the hull. You can't stand up straight, the ceiling beams are so low you have to perpetually stoop, a physical submission forced upon you by the architecture of your prison. The first thing that hits you, even harder than it did in Newgate, is the smell. It's a complex, horrifying miasma. The dominant scent is bilge water, the foul, stagnant liquid that collects in the very bottom of the ship, a festering soup of seawater, rot, and human waste from 100 previous journeys. Layered on top of that is the sharp, acrid smell of fresh-cut pine from the new bunks, the lingering odor of tar from the ship's seams, and, most unsettling lie, the smell of fear from the women who have already been herded in ahead of you. The second thing is the darkness. The only light is the faint, ghostly glow from a single horn-windowed lantern, swaying gently with the ship's movement at the far end of the compartment. It casts long, dancing shadows that make the space feel alive and threatening. Your world has been reduced to shades of black and grey. You can barely make out the faces of the other women, who appear as pale, silent shapes in the gloom. Then, the noise. The ship is still moored at the dock, but the sounds are already alien. The constant gentle creak of the ship's timbers, like the groaning of a great beast. The muffled shouts of the sailors on the decks far above. The lapping of the Thames against the hull. A sound that is unavailing close, just a few inches of wood away from where you stand. And underpinning it all, the metallic, rhythmic clanking of chains as dozens of women shift their weight. A grim orchestra of captivity. You are shoved towards a set of rough-hewn wooden structures that line the walls. These are the bunks. They are not individual beds, but wide, stacked shelves, 2 tiers high. Each shelf is meant to hold 4 women, but you can already see they will be cramming in 5 or 6. There are no mattresses, no blankets, just bare, splintery wood. You and 3 other women are assigned to a lower bunk. You crawl into the cramped space, your back pressing against the cold, damp curve of the hall. There is barely enough room to lie down, and certainly not enough for all of you to lie on your backs at once. You will sleep pressed against strangers, a tangle of limbs in the dark. This is your designated spot. Your entire universe for the foreseeable future has shrunk to a space roughly 6 feet long and 2 feet high. The lack of personal space is absolute. You are never alone. Yet you have never felt so lonely. The woman next to you is sobbing quietly, a desperate, hopeless sound. Another is muttering what sounds like a prayer. The woman on your other side is silent, her body rigid with tension. You don't know their names, their crimes. You are just bodies. You are just bodies, packed together like salted fish in a barrel. Here, in the dark, you begin to grasp the sheer logistical horror of this enterprise. The government had specifications, of course. On paper, each convict was allotted a certain amount of space, a certain ration of food, but the reality, as historians have pieced together from surgeons' logs and the rare convict testimony, was often very different. The private contractors who ran the ships had every incentive to cut corners. More convicts meant more money. Let's face your Ian, which feels so inhuman, is the direct result of a calculation on a ledger in an office in London. Your suffering is a line item in someone else's budget. The academic debate over the conditions often centers on a grim question. Was the high mortality rate on some of the early voyages a result of deliberate cruelty, or just catastrophic incompetence? The answer, most likely, is a bleak combination of both. There was a fundamental lack of understanding about hygiene and disease transmission, combined with a profound indifference to the lives of the criminal class. You are a disposable commodity. A short, brutish-looking sailor with a lantern appears at the barred door. Settle down in there, you witches, he grunts, his voice devoid of any emotion. You'll have plenty of time to get to know each other. He slides a wooden bucket into the compartment before locking the door again. That's for your necessaries, he adds before his footsteps recede. 1 bucket for over 100 women. The reality of that sinks in, a fresh wave of horror and humiliation. You lie back on the hard wood, pulling your thin shawl around you, though it offers no real warmth. You stare up at the wooden planks of the bunk above you, just inches from your face. The darkness feels like a physical weight pressing down on you. The ship has not even left the river, and already this place feels like a tomb. You have been swallowed by the machine of empire, digested and deposited into its lightless gut. The journey has truly begun, and you are already lost. The ship doesn't move for what feels like days. You exist in a state of suspended animation, a limbo of darkness and waiting. Time loses its meaning. Without the sun, the only way to mark its passage is by the delivery of food, a meager ration of hard, stale biscuit and a ladle of watery, lukewarm soup passed through the bars twice a day. The waiting is a form of torture in itself, allowing your imagination to run wild with woods to cut. Then, one day, the sounds change. The familiar, gentle lapping of the river is replaced by a deeper, more powerful groaning of the ship's timbers. You feel a new motion, not the gentle rock of being moored, but a slow, deliberate forward glide. The muffled shouts from the deck above are more urgent, more rhythmic. The anchor is being raised. The sails are being unfurled. You are moving. A collective murmur runs through the women in the hold. It's a sound of fear, of resignation, and for some, a flicker of strange anticipation. As the ship is pulled by the tide down the Thames and out towards the English Channel, the motion becomes more pronounced. It's a gentle, rolling sway at first, a cradle-like rock that is almost soothing. Some of the women, exhausted from the tension of waiting, are lulled into a restless sleep. You lie awake, listening to the creaks and groans of the ship, trying to picture the world you are leaving behind. You imagine the green fields of Kent sliding by, the last strip of England you will ever see. The thought brings a fresh pang of loss, so sharp it feels like a physical wound. The first night at sea is a descent into a new dimension of misery. As the ship leaves the relative shelter of the estuary and meets the open waters of the channel, the gentle rolling becomes a violent, unpredictable pitching and tossing. The sea is a relentless force, and down here, in the belly of the beast, you feel its full power. The ship is lifted up on the crest of a wave, held for a sickening moment in the air, and then dropped with a stomach-lurching crash into the trough. Everything that isn't nailed down slides and bangs. The lantern at the end of the hold swings wildly, sending shadows dancing like frantic ghosts. The sounds are terrifying. The wind howls through the rigging high above, a mournful, shrieking sound that filters down to you as a low moan. The waves don't just lap against the hull any more, they slam against it with the force of a battering ram. With every crash, the whole world shudders, and you are convinced the wooden planks that separate you from the churning black water are about to splinter and give way. And then the sickness begins. A low moan starts from one corner of the hold, then another. Soon, the air is filled with the wretched sounds of women being violently ill. Sees inscus as a brutal, total affliction. It's not just nausea, it's a complete betrayal by your own body. Your head spins, a cold sweat breaks out on your skin, and your stomach heaves with a force that leaves you weak and trembling. The single bucket provided for necessaries is immediately, hopelessly overwhelmed. The floor of the hold becomes a slick, disgusting mess of vomit and filth, the stench quickly becoming unbearable. You curl into a tight ball, pressing your face against the cold, damp wood of the hull, trying to find a single point of stability in a world that has dissolved into chaotic motion. But there is none. You are trapped in a box that is being shaken by a giant, angry hand. The darkness is absolute, punctuated only by the sounds of suffering. The weeping from the first day has now been replaced by the raw, animal sounds of physical misery. You hear curses, prayers, and whimpers all jumbled together. This first night establishes a brutal truth: there is no escape. Not from the ship, not from the motion, not from the sounds and smells of the women crammed in around you. There is no privacy in which to be sick, no comfort to be offered. You are all in this together, yet utterly alone in your own personal agony. One of the more peculiar and cruel details recorded by ship surgeons was that the crew often showed a complete lack of sympathy for the convict sea's inscus, viewing it as a weakness or even a form of malingering. To the sailors who had long ago found their sea legs, the landlubber's suffering was a source of detached amusement. It's a point of historical debate whether the severity of the conditions in the first few days was a calculated strategy to break the prisoners' spirits early on, or simply the unavoidable consequence of putting dozens of people who had never been to sea into the worst part of a ship in rough weather. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, a combination of indifference and the raw physics of the ocean. Sometime in the deepest, darkest part of that first night, you feel a shift. The woman pressed against you, the one who had been muttering prayers, goes still. Her moaning stops. At first, you think she has finally fallen asleep. But the stillness is too absolute. In a brief moment, when the ship settles into a trough, you reach out a hand in the pitch black and touch her cheek. It is cold and clammy. You can't be sure. You have no way of knowing. You just lie there, next to a silent, cold body, while the ship continues to heave and the world continues to spin. The first night at sea is not over, and already death has become your bunk mate. After a few days, or perhaps a week, it's impossible to be sure. The sea calms. The violent pitching subsides into a more manageable rhythmic roll. Your stomach, and those of the women around you who have survived the initial onslaught of sickness, begins to settle. The gnawing emptiness of hunger starts to replace the heaving nausea. It's in this fragile state of recovery that you become aware of a new dynamic, a new set of rules that operate entirely outside the captain's logbook. The world of the ship is divided into rigid hierarchies. At the very top is the captain, a remote, almost godlike figure you never see. Below him are his officers. Then come the crew, the common sailors and marines, who are themselves subject to a harsh and unforgiving discipline. And at the absolute bottom, lower than the ship's rats, are you and the other convicts. But even within your own miserable world, a new power structure is emerging, one dictated not by rank, but by access and opportunity. The guards, the marines and sailors assigned to watch over you, are the gatekeepers. They control everything. They are the ones who unbolt the hatch to the upper deck, the ones who lower your meager rations, the ones who hold the keys to this wooden prison. And you quickly learn that their power extends far beyond their official duties. It starts with small things. A sailor might linger by the bar door watching you. He might offer a sly smile. Then the offers begin. They are whispered through the bars. A bit of biscuit, love for a smile, got a spare orange here. What am I offered? The price is never stated explicitly at first. It hangs in the air, a greasy, unspoken suggestion. The currency they demand is not money, you have none. The currency is you. This is the grim, unspoken economy of the convict transport ship. For the sailors, this long, tedious voyage is a period of profound isolation, cut off from the world and its comforts. The presence of 100 or more captive women in the hold becomes an overwhelming temptation, a resource to be exploited. For a woman in your position, the choice is a horrific one. To refuse means to continue starving on the barely IV-able official rations, to remain in the filth and darkness. To accept means trading a piece of yourself for a momentary reprieve from suffering. You watch as some of the women, often the bolder ones like Moll from Newgate, learn to play this dangerous game. They flirt with the guards using a coarse, practiced charm. They become sea wives to particular sailors or even officers. In exchange, they receive extra food, a bit of a chance to come up on deck for a few minutes of fresh air. They become a sort of prison aristocracy, hoarding their small privileges and lording them over the others. The ship's surgeon, who is supposed to be your advocate and protector, is often complicit. His log might officially condemn the immoral commingling of crew and convicts, but the reality is that he often turns a blind eye, or is powerless to stop it. In some documented cases, surgeons even participated, using their access to medicine as leverage. This is a point of significant academic discussion, the degree of agency these women actually had. Were they victims of systemic sexual exploitation, or were they making calculated, pragmatic choices to survive an impossible situation? The answer is, of course, a complex and uncomfortable both. To call it a choice is to ignore the overwhelming power imbalance. You cannot freely consent when the alternative is starvation or sickness. Yet to deny their agency completely is to paint them as purely passive victims, ignoring the intelligence and resilience it took to navigate this treacherous system. They were survivors, using the only tool left to them. You, however, are not one of them. The thought of it fills you with a mixture of fear and disgust. You try to make yourself invisible, retreating to the darkest corner of your bunk whenever a guard approaches the door. You share your meager biscuit with the young, terrified girl next to you, forming a tiny, fragile alliance of refusal. But this choice has consequences. You grow weaker. The hunger is a constant, dull ache. You watch the favored women eating a piece of salt pork, and the smell is so intoxicating it makes you dizzy. The atmosphere in the hold becomes poisoned with jealousy and resentment. The women who refuse to participate are looked down upon by those who do, seen as foolish or self-righteous. Think you're too good for it, do you? Moll sneers one day, wiping grease from her chin with the back of her hand. Pride's a cold meal, darling. The rules are clear. The ship is a microcosm of a brutal society. Power belongs to the men with the keys. Proximity to that power offers survival at a price. Your body, which you had always thought of as your own, is now a commodity, a potential bargaining chip in a game you never asked to play. The chains on your ankles are a visible symbol of your bondage, but you are beginning to understand the most insidious prison is the one being built around your own flesh. You are trapped not just by the wooden walls of the hull, but by the predatory desires of your captors. Just as you begin to acclimate to the rolling of the ship and the gnawing hunger, your body finds a new way to betray you. It starts with a lurch in your stomach that has nothing to do with the motion of the waves. At first, you dismiss it as just another pang of hunger, another cramp from the bad water and stale biscuits. But this feeling is different. It's a persistent, watery unease that soon blossoms into full-blown dysentery. They call it the bloody flux, a name that is both terrifyingly descriptive and horribly accurate. The disease sweeps through the packed, filthy hold like a fire through dry grass. The single bucket, already a symbol of ultimate degradation, becomes a sight of desperate, agonizing competition. The air, already thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and bilge water, takes on a new foul and inescapable odor of sickness. Your body, which you've been trying to protect and keep to yourself, is no longer under your control. It's racked with cramps that make you cry out, doubling over on the hard wooden bunk. It betrays you with a humiliating, unstoppable frequency. You grow weaker by the hour, your skin clammy and pale in the gloom. The small amount of food and water you manage to get down passes right through you, leaving you more dehydrated and exhausted than before. You are not alone in your misery. The hold becomes a hospital ward from a nightmare. The sounds of coughing and dretching are now the constant soundtrack to your existence. The woman on the bunk above you, who had seemed strong and resilient, is now delirious with fever, her mutterings a constant, nonsensical drone. The young girl you befriended is listless, her eyes large and glassy in her thin face. You try to offer her a sip of your water ration, but she barely has the strength to lift her head. This is the pre-show, the grim overture before the main event. While dysentery is debilitating and deadly enough, it's often just a precursor to the two great terrors of these voyages, scurvy and typhus. Scurvy is the disease of slow decay. It comes from the lack of fresh fruit and vegetables, the absence of what we now know as vitamin C. Its symptoms are insidious. At first, it's just a profound lethargy, a bone-deep weariness. Then your gums begin to swell and bleed. Even ones from childhood can mysteriously reopen. Your teeth loosen in their sockets. Your joints ache with a fiery pain. It's a disease that literally causes the body to fall apart. The crew is not immune, but they are often better protected. They might have access to a small supply of anti-score, but ICS like sauerkraut or concentrated fruit juice, things that are never wasted on the convicts. The official rations for convicts were designed for sheer caloric survival, not nutritional health. A typical daily allowance might be a pound of biscuit, some sorted beef or pork so tough and described as being like wood, and a serving of peas or oatmeal. It was a diet almost perfectly designed to induce scurvy over a long voyage. The other shadow looming over you is typhus, the gale fever you managed to escape in Newgate. But the lice that carry it have, of course, come aboard with you. In the cramped, unventilated hold, where everyone is packed together, it's a perfect breeding ground. Once typhus takes hold, it's devastating. High fever, splitting headaches, a painful rash, and delirium. This is where the ship's surgeon becomes a pivotal figure. His role, as historians have studied through their surviving journals, was an almost impossible one. He was often the only man on board with any medical training fighting 18th century diseases with 18th century knowledge. He had no concept of germ theory. He believed diseases like typhus were spread by miasma or bad air, a logical conclusion given the stench of the hold. His primary weapons were letting, purging, and the administration of mercury-based compounds, treatments that were often as dangerous as the diseases they were meant to cure. The academic debate continues over the effectiveness and motivations of these surgeons. Were they butchers callously experimenting on a captive population, or were they dedicated men, doing the best they could with the limited, and often flawed, knowledge of their time? The journals reveal a mix. Some are filled with genuine compassion and frustration at the death toll. Others are cold and clinical, recording deaths with the detached air of an accountant. One day, the surgeon does his rounds. HES, a tired-looking man with a perpetually sour expression. He doesn't enter the hold. He stands at the barred door, peering into the gloom. "Any sick?" he calls out, his voice flat. A dozen weak voices answer. He looks in your direction, his eyes briefly meeting yours. He sees the sickness, the weakness, the despair. He makes a note on a slate. Perhaps he'll authorize an extra ration of water, or a dose of fever powders. More likely, he'll do nothing. He has to preserve his meager medical supplies for the crew, or for the convicts who might still be of some value as laborers upon arrival. You, in your current state, are a bad investment. You lie back down, a wave of dizziness washing over you. Your own body has become the enemy. It's a prison within a prison, a vessel of pain and humiliation that is slowly, inexorably breaking down. The ship sails on indifferent. The sun shines on the open deck, the wind fills the sails, but down here, in the dark, your body is staging its own quiet, agonizing rebellion, a mutiny you cannot hope to win. The days melt into a single, unending stretch of dim, fetid misery. Your life shrinks to the most basic, primal functions, stripped of all dignity. The routine is brutally simple, governed not by a clock, but by the rhythms of hunger and the foul demands of the ever-present sickness. The morning begins not with light, but with a change in the sounds from above. You hear the holy stones, large blocks of sandstone, being dragged across the deck to scrub it clean. Up there, in the world of the free, there is order, cleanliness, a battle against the grime of the sea. Down here, you live in a state of perpetual, accumulating filth. The floor of your prison is a slick, treacherous morass of vomit, excrement, and spilled food, all sloshing gently with the motion of the ship. The stench is now so overpowering that you've almost become numb to it, a feat you would have thought impossible. It's the first thing you smell when you wake, and the last thing you smell as you drift into a fitful, feverish sleep. It has become the very air you breathe. Breakfast arrives. Two sailors appear at the barred entryway, their noses wrinkled in disgust. They don't speak to you, they just shove the day's rations through a small opening. It's the same every day, a hunk of ship's biscuit for each woman. This biscuit is the stuff of legend. It's not like any bread you've ever known. It's a rock-hard, unleavened disc of baked flour and water, designed to last for years. It's so hard you can't bite into it without risking a tooth. The only way to eat it is to soak it in your water ration until it softens into a pulpy, tasteless mush. And even then, you have to be careful. The biscuits are almost always infested with weevils. When you break one open, you can see the little black insects in their tunnels. At first, the sight was horrifying. Now, it's just a part of the meal. The old sailor's joke is that the weevils are a welcome source of fresh meat. You no longer have the energy to pick them out. You just close your eyes and swallow. Water is the most precious commodity. It's stored in large wooden casks in the ship's hold. By this point in the voyage, it's no longer fresh. It's stale, slimy, and tastes of the wood of the barrel. You are allotted about a pint a day for drinking, for soaking your biscuit, and for any attempt at washing, which is a laughable impossibility. The thirst is constant. Your mouth is always dry, your tongue thick. You dream of clean, cold water, of a stream, of a pump in a London square. The dreams are so vivid that waking up to the foul-tasting, lukewarm reality of your ration is a small, daily heartbreak. The toilet, as it were, remains the single, overflowing bucket. Using it is an exercise in ultimate degradation. There is no privacy. You have to relieve yourself in full view of every other woman in the hold. A final, brutal stripping away of your humanity. The bucket is supposed to be emptied once a day, but often the sailors forget, or can't be bothered. When it overflows, the contents simply join the rest of the sludge on the floor. This detail of the sanitary arrangements, or lack thereof, is something historians have pieced together from a variety of sources, including surgeons. Logs that complain bitterly about the indolence of the convicts in not keeping their quarters clean, a complaint that is, in itself, a testament to the officials' complete detachment from the reality of the conditions they created. It's easy to write in a logbook that the prisoners should be cleaner. It's another thing entirely to be one of 100 sick, weak and chained women in a dark, unventilated space with a single bucket. The academic world still finds it hard to convey the sheer sensory horror of this existence. We can list the rations and describe the lack of facilities, but the lived experience of that constant, inescapable stench, the feeling of filth on your skin, the taste of rot in your food, it's almost beyond description. It was a multi-sensory assault designed to break a person down, whether by intention or by neglect. One of the more bizarre, unpathetic pastimes that emerges from this boredom and squalor is rat hunting. The ship is teeming with rats, creatures that are fat and bald from feasting on the ship's stores and the convicts' waste. Sometimes a woman with a last spark of energy will try to corner one, using a loose piece of wood or even her bare hands. If she succeeds, the rat might be killed and, in the most desperate of circumstances, even eaten a source of fresh protein in a diet of salt and dust. Though it's just a way to pass the time, a brief, violent distraction from the suffocating monotony. Your day is a void. There is nothing to do but lie on your bunk, listen to the ship creak, and feel your own body slowly giving up. You have no energy for conversation. You just drift, suspended in this stinking, timeless twilight. You are no longer a person, you are a digestive tract, a fading machine being transported across the globe for reasons you can no longer clearly remember. The vibrant bolt of calico that started this whole nightmare seems like a memory from someone else's life. One day a new presence appears at the barred door. It's the ship's surgeon, but this time HES, not just peering in. HES accompanied by two burly sailors who unlock and swing the heavy door open. A wave of relatively fresh, salty air washes into the hold, a shocking contrast to the stagnant effluge you've been breathing. It's so bracing it's almost painful. Inspection. The surgeon announces, his voice attempting a tone of authority that is immediately swallowed by the oppressive misery of the space. He steps gingerly into the compartment, a handkerchief held over his nose, his boots immediately sinking slightly into the filth on the floor. This is the surgeon's formal shinshu or tour of inspection. It's a required part of his duties, a moment where he must officially assess the health and condition of the convicts under his care. His findings will be recorded in his journal, a document that will eventually be submitted to the transport back in London. It is a piece of bureaucratic theatre, a performance of diligence in a situation that is fundamentally beyond his control. He begins to move through the hold, the sailors flanking him, holding lanterns that cast a harsh, revealing light. For the first time in weeks, you can clearly see the state of your fellow prisoners. The sight is horrifying. The women are emaciated, their skin stretched tight over their bones, covered in sores and grime. Their hair is matted, their eyes are either dull and lifeless or wide with feverish delirium. The lantern light exposes the full squalor of the hold, the layers of filth on the floor, the desperate, hollow faces. You are a gallery of human decay. The surgeon's inspection is swift and impersonal. He doesn't offer words of comfort. He is a man of science, such as it is in the 18th century, and his job is to observe, diagnose, and categorize. He pokes a woman's swollen leg, noting the telltale pitting edema of scurvy. He forces another to open her mouth, peering at her bleeding, spongy gums. "Score, but I see," he mutters to himself, making a note on his slate. He points to a woman lying motionless on her bunk. Not of anyone in particular. One of her bunkmates gives a slow shake of her head. "Been gone since yesterday, sir." The surgeon nods grimly. "Have the body brought up on deck for burial at sunset." When he gets to you, his gaze is clinical. He notes your pallor, the way you tremble with weakness. He might ask you to stick out your tongue or feel your forehead for fever. You are a collection of symptoms, a data point in the rising tide of sickness on his ship. His expression is one of weariness and frustration. He is losing the battle, and he knows it. And here, the strange duality of his role comes into sharp focus. On one hand, he is your only potential source of relief. He controls the medical supplies, the fever powders, often containing chalk and other useless ingredients, the doses of wine or brandy that might be prescribed as a stimulant, and most importantly, the precious anti-squawk, but ICS like lime juice or essence of malt, if the ship is even carrying them. But his visit is not just about healing. It's also about control and assessment. His journal is not just a medical record, it's a report on the viability of the ship's human cargo. He is, in a sense, a quality control inspector. A dead convict is a financial loss for the contractor. A sick convict who arrives unable to work is a drain on the colony's resources. So his shinshu is also a kind of audit. This is where another, more sinister, transaction can occur. For the women who have formed relationships with the crew, the surgeon's visit is a different experience. A sailor might slip the surgeon a word, "Take a look at Mary, Doc, she's a good girl." And Mary might receive an extra ration of wine, or a precious spoonful of lime juice that you will never see. Medicine, like food and fresh air, becomes part of the ship's illicit economy. There's a curious and much debated historical tidbit about some of these surgeons, their scientific curiosity. For some, This voyage was a unique opportunity to study diseases in a controlled, albeit horrifying, environment. Their journals sometimes contain detailed, dispassionate observations about the progression of scurvy or typhus that border on experimental. They would note the effects of different treatments on different subjects, comparing outcomes. Were they trying to find a cure out of a sense of duty, or were they simply treating the dying women in the hold as a captive research population? The line is often uncomfortably blurry. The surgeon finishes his inspection. He has seen enough. As he turns to leave, he issues a few perfunctory orders to the women who are still strong enough to stand. This place is a disgrace. You are to scrape the floor by your bedding. The orders are absurd. Scrape the floor with whatever your bedding wear, but it is his duty to give the order, just as it is his duty to note in his log that he instructed the convicts on matters of hygiene. He leaves, and the door is bolted shut behind him, plunging you back into the familiar gloom. The brief intrusion of lightened authority is over. Nothing has fundamentally changed. A body will be removed. A few notes have been made in a book, but the sickness and despair remain. The surgeon's visit wasn't about compassion. It was about accounting. And as you lie there, the encounter leaves you with a chilling realization you are not a patient to be cured, but an asset to be managed. The heat starts as a subtle change in the air. For weeks, the hold has been damp and cold, but now a new quality enters the atmosphere, thick, oppressive warmth that feels heavy and wet. The ship has sailed south, crossing into the tropics, and the climate shift penetrates even down here below the waterline. The air, already foul, becomes stagnant and suffocating. Sweat slicks your skin constantly, mingling with the grime, creating a new layer of itchy, greasy misery. Which was once cold and clammy to the touch, is now warm and damp, weeping beads of condensation. This is the breeding season for the fever. It starts with a headache, a dull, throbbing pain behind your eyes that quickly intensifies into a skull-splitting agony. Then comes the chill, a violent, uncontrollable shivering that racks your weakened body, even in the sweltering heat. You huddle under your thin, filthy shawl, but the cold is coming from inside you. It's a deep, cellular cold that no amount of warmth can touch. After the chills come the fever. A raging fire ignites within you. Your skin becomes burning hot to the touch, your face flushed. The world dissolves into a hallucinatory red-tinged haze. The familiar sounds of the hold, the creaking wood, the groans of the other women become distorted and monstrous. The shadows cast by the single lantern writhe and twist into terrifying shapes. Thirst becomes an all-consuming torment. But the brackish water you're given does nothing to quench the fire in your throat. This is typhus. The gale fever, the lice that carry the rickettsia bacteria thrive in these hot, humid, uncrowded conditions. Having survived the journey from Newgate in your clothes and hair, they now pass from person to person with terrifying ease. Once the infection takes hold in the weakened, malnourished population of the hold, it spreads like wildfire. The whole transforms from a ward of chronic misery into an inferno of acute sickness. The number of women incapacitated by the fever grows daily. The distinction between the living and the dead becomes terrifyingly blurred. A woman lies in a feverish stupor, muttering incoherently, and no one knows if she is in the throes of the disease or on the verge of death. The daily routine of survival breaks down completely. There are not enough healthy women left to collect the rations or empty the bucket. The dead lie where they fall, sometimes for a day or more before the guards, holding cloths over their faces, come to drag the bodies out. The burials become a commonplace event. You hear the brief, solemn words of the captain or surgeon from the deck above, followed by a heavy splash. Another one gone. You lie on your bunk, lost in the delirium of the fever. Time ceases to exist. You drift in and out of consciousness, haunted by disjointed memories and terrifying visions. You see the face of the shopkeeper, his mouth twisted in rage. You see the brightly colored calico unspooling in the mud. You feel the cold cobblestones against your cheek. You are back in London, but it's a nightmare version, populated by shadowy figures with hollow eyes. You call out for your mother, a name you haven't spoken in years, your voice a dry croak. The debate among medical historians about the typhus epidemics on these ships is intense. While they now understand the bacterial cause and the louse vector, The 18th century miasma theory, the belief that the disease was caused by the foul air itself, led to tragically ineffective preventative measures. The surgeon might order the hold to be smoked with burning sulfur washed with vinegar. These actions, while making the place smell even worse, did absolutely nothing to kill the lice. It was a battle fought with the wrong weapons against the wrong enemy. The mortality rates from typhus on some voyages were apocalyptic. The Second Fleet, a notorious convoy that sailed in 1790, lost over a quarter of its human cargo during the voyage, with hundreds more arriving in Sydney so sick that they died shortly after landing. The contractor for that feat was paid a flat fee per convict embarked, not per convict who survived, creating one of the most perverse and deadly incentives in the history of the transportation system. Was this a case of criminal negligence or mass murder? The line is so thin as to be non-existent. In your fever dream, you are acutely aware of the lice, a constant, crawling sensation on your scalp and skin. You are too weak to scratch. You feel a strange sense of detachment, as if you are floating above your own body, watching this wretched, burning creature on the bunk. Is this what it feels like to die? A moment of clarity breaks through the fog. The young girl you had shared your biscuit with is leaning over you. Her face is thin and pale, but her eyes are clear. She is one of the lucky few who has so far avoided the fever. She holds a piece of cloth, dampened with her own precious water ration, and gently wipes your forehead. It's a small, almost futile gesture in the face of such overwhelming sickness. But it's an act of profound humanity. It's a flicker of light in the deepest darkness. "Don't you go," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the din. "Don't you leave me here alone," her words anchor you. They are a thin thread pulling you back from the edge of the abyss. The fever still rages, the shadow of death still looms, but for the first time in a long time, you are not just a collection of symptoms. You are a person being cared for by another. You close your eyes, clinging to that thread, and for the first time, you make a conscious decision to fight. You will not become another splash in the endless ocean. Somehow, you survive the fever. The fire recedes, leaving you weak, emaciated, and hollowed out, but alive. The delirium fades, and you are returned to the grim reality of the hold, a ghost resurrected. As your strength slowly, painfully returns, you begin to see your surroundings with a new, hardened clarity. The shared trauma of the epidemic has changed the social fabric of your prison. The bonds of desperation have either been fused into steel or shattered completely. The hold has become a raw, stripped-down version of society. All the niceties, all the pretenses of the world above, have been burned away. What's left is a brutal, pragmatic struggle for survival, and in this struggle, alliances are everything. You cannot survive alone. The fever taught you that. The simple act of the young girl wiping your brow was more valuable than any ration of food. So, a new kind of society forms in the darkness, a women's Junghu, a world with its own codes, its own leaders, and its own outcasts. The old hierarchies, like the one dictated by Molenturk Ronies who bartered with the sailors, have been disrupted by the great equalizer of disease. Some of them died, others were so weakened that their authority crumbled. Now, new factions emerged, centered around the survivors. You and the young girl whose name you learn is Nancy form the nucleus of your own small group. You are joined by a quiet, older woman named Eleanor, who lost her two closest friends to the fever and now clutches a small, carved wooden bird as her only comfort. Another woman, Sarah, who managed to keep her strength by hoarding rainwater during a squall, becomes your provider of that most precious resource. Your little group of four is a fragile ecosystem built on shared weakness and mutual support. You look out for each other. When the biscuit ration is delivered, you pool your shares, breaking them up to ensure everyone gets a piece, even if someone is too sick to claim their own. You save a mouthful of your water ration for Nancy when her throat is dry from a lingering cough. When Eleanor dissolves into silent, shaking grief, you huddle around her, offering the mute comfort of your presence. It's a society built on the smallest of kindness. But this kindness is a luxury you can only afford within your own circle. Beyond your small alliance, the law of the jungle prevails. Other groups have formed, and the hold is now a patchwork of wary, competing factions. A stolen piece of biscuit can lead to a vicious, hissing fight can fester into a silent, simmering feud that lasts for weeks. Moll, who also survived the fever, her scarred face now looking even more gaunt and wolfish, leads the largest and most ruthless faction. Her group still has ties to some of the sailors, and they use their access to extra food information as a weapon. They are the strong, and they prey on the weak. They will steal from the dying and bully the isolated. Navigating the politics of the hold means knowing who to avoid, whose path not to cross, and when to be invisible. This formation of prison subcultures is a well-documented phenomenon, but the specifics of what happened in the female convict holds are harder to piece together. The official records written by men rarely captured the nuances of these relationships. They saw a mass of disorderly women, not a complex social network. Historians have had to reconstruct this world from scraps of evidence, a line in a surgeon's journal mentioning a fight, a rare letter from a convict that survived, or by reading between the lines of official reports. The debate often revolves around the nature of these female relationships. Were they purely pragmatic alliances, friendships of the road born of necessity, or did genuine, deep bonds of affection and solidarity form in these horrific conditions? The evidence suggests both. There was undoubtedly bitter rivalry and cruelty, but there are also accounts of profound loyalty, of women protecting each other, nursing each other, and forming partnerships that would last a lifetime, long after the ship had reached Australia. You learn the subtle language of this new world. You learn to read the shifts in the atmosphere, to know when to speak and when to stay silent. You learn that trust is the most valuable and dangerous currency. You trust the 3 women in your circle with your life, literally. You trust no one else. One of the more peculiar aspects of this social order is how information travels. News, or rather rumor, trickles down from the world above. A woman who has a friend among the crew might hear that the captain has taken a navigational reading, and that you are nearing the coast of Africa. Or a sailor might complain about the quality of the salt pork, a piece of information that is greedily analyzed for what it implies about the remaining length of the voyage. These scraps of information are hoarded and traded like jewels, giving a flicker of shape to the vast, terrifying unknown that surrounds you. You are no longer the naive girl who was arrested for stealing cloth. You are a veteran, a survivor, a member of a tribe. You have a place, however wretched, in this upside-down world. You have people who depend on you, and people you depend on. This fragile, fierce bond is your armor against the despair. It doesn't make the hunger go away, or the filth, but it gives you a reason to wake up in the morning. In the heart of this throating hell, you have found a strange, desperate kind of family. Just when you think you have adapted to every possible misery this voyage can offer, the sea decides to remind you of its ultimate, absolute power. It begins subtly. The rhythmic, almost comforting roll of the ship that has been the backdrop to your life for months begins to change. It becomes erratic, jerky. The creaking of the ship's timbers deepens into a painful, groaning sound, as if the vessel itself is in agony. The sounds from the deck above change too. The sailors' shouts are sharper, more urgent. You hear the frantic flapping of canvas being hastily reefed in. Then the motion truly begins. The ship starts to climb a wave that seems impossibly high, lifting you up until you feel a terrifying weightlessness. You hang there for a heart-stopping second at the peak, and then the world drops out from under you. The ship plunges down into the trough with a violent, shuddering crash that you feel in the marrow of your bones. Water, cold and shocking, cascades down the hatchway, drenching a section of the hold. A collective scream of terror rises from the women. This is not a squall. This is a storm. A full-blown tempest. Down here in the dark, chained belly of the ship, the experience is one of pure, primal terror. You are blind, locked in a box that is being tossed about by an unimaginably huge and violent force. You have no way of knowing what is happening. Is a mast cracking? Is the rudder failing? Is the ship taking on water? Every crash, every groan of the hull could be the last. The world dissolves into a chaos of sound and motion. The ship is thrown from side to side with such violence that you are slammed against the wooden walls of your bunk, then thrown back against your bunk mates. Loose items, a tin cup, or wooden ball become deadly projectiles, flying through the darkness. The single lantern was extinguished long ago, plunging you into absolute, terrifying blackness. The noise is apocalyptic. The roar of the wind is a physical force, a constant, deafening scream that seems to be trying to tear the ship apart. The waves are no longer just waves, they are liquid mountains, smashing against the hull with the sound of cannon fire. You can hear the groans of the timber, the shriek of the rigging, and through it all, the terrified cries of the 100 women trapped with you. You, Nancy, Eleanor, and Sarah huddled together in your bunk, a tight knot of humanity against the chaos. There is no talk. What could you possibly say? You just cling to each other. A silent, desperate pact. Eleanor is clutching her little wooden bird so tightly her knuckles are white, though you can't see them in the dark. You can only feel them pressed against your arm. This is a moment where historical records and personal experience diverge completely. A captain's log might record the storm with clinical precision at 4 bells. The wind veered south-southwest, increasing to a gale. Hove to under storm stay sails. Shipping heavy seas. For the captain, it's a professional challenge, a battle of skill and seamanship against the elements. For you, it is the end of the world. Historians debate the convicts' state of mind during these events. Were they praying for the ship to survive, or were some so deep in their misery that they might have welcomed the quick, final release of the ocean? It's an impossible question to answer. Most likely, it was the purest form of terror, the animal instinct to live, that took over. You don't think about your sentence, or Australia, or your past life. You only think about the next wave, the next wave. The next moment, a particularly monstrous wave hits the ship broadside. The vessel is knocked onto its side, tilting at an angle so steep it feels like you are on a wall. You are thrown from your bunk, landing in a heap with dozens of other women on the low side of the hold. The filthy bilge water, which normally sloshes in the very bottom of the ship, surges up, drenching you in a foul, icy deluge. Panic erupts. Women are screaming, convinced the ship is capsizing, that you are about to go down, filled with floating filth. And then, with an agonizingly slow groan, the ship rights itself. It settles back onto a more even keel, still being tossed and battered, but no longer on its side. A collective, ragged sob of relief ripples through the hold. You scramble back to your bunk, soaked, shivering, and covered in a new layer of unimaginable grime. The storm rages for what feels like an eternity. It could be hours, it could be a day. Time has no meaning in the roaring darkness. You simply endure. You exist from one breath to the next, one lurch to the next. You are stripped of everything: dignity, hope, even the ability to think. All that is left is the raw, visceral fear of a trapped animal. Then, gradually, almost imperceptibly, the violence begins to lessen. The crashes become less frequent, the roaring of the wind subsides into a howl, then a moan. The ship's motion, while still rough, becomes less life-threateningly chaotic. You lie in the darkness, listening to the exhausted, weeping sounds of the women around you. The immediate terror recedes, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a renewed, profound sense of your own powerlessness. You survived. But the experience has left its mark. It has scoured you clean of any remaining illusion that you have any control over your fate. You are nothing but a piece of driftwood, tossed on an ocean of chance, trapped in a wooden box at the mercy of the wind and the wave. Days after the storm, a miracle happens. The sky clears, the sea settles into a gentle, glassy swell, and the air becomes warm and bright. The change is so profound it feels like the world has been reborn. And with this change comes an unprecedented event. The hatch at the top of the ladder is thrown open, and instead of a sailor with a bucket of rations, the surgeon's face appears, silhouetted against a rectangle of brilliant, painful blue sky, on your feet. He calls down, his voice unusually energetic. 10 at a time, on deck for airing. A stunned silence falls over the hold. On deck in the sun, it seems impossible. The order is repeated, more impatiently this time, and a slow, disbelieving shuffle begins. The women who are strong enough to walk clamber towards the ladder. It's a slow, arduous process. You are weak, your legs unsteady after months of disuse. But the promise of fresh air and sunlight is a powerful motivator. Your group of four goes up together, helping each other on the steep ladder. As your head emerges from the hatchway, the light is blinding. You squeeze your eyes shut, raising a hand to shield them. The sheer intensity of the sunlight is a physical blow. When you slowly, cautiously open your eyes again, the sight that greets you is overwhelming. The sky, it's a vast, brilliant, impossible blue stretching from one horizon to the other. You've forgotten how big the world is. After months of living under a ceiling just inches from your face, the sheer, infinite space above you is dizzying. You take a breath, and for the first time since leaving London, your lungs fill with clean, fresh, soul pure, so intoxicating. It feels like drinking from a spring. You can taste the salt on your lip. You stand on the deck, blinking like a newborn creature taking in the scene. The ship, which from below was a prison of groaning wooden darkness, is now a thing of stark beauty. The wooden deck is bleached pale by the sun, the sails are brilliant white against the blue sky, and the intricate web of ropes and rigging is a masterpiece of ordered complexity. The ocean is no longer a threatening, churning blackness, but a sparkling expanse of deep blue, glittering with a million points of light. You are not alone. About 20 other women from your hold are on deck with you, all with the same dazed, wondrous expression. You are all still filthy, emaciated, and in rags, a stark contrast to the clean, bright world around you. The sailors on duty watch you with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, keeping their distance. You are a spectacle, a temporary exhibition of human misery allowed a brief visit to the world of the living. This practice of airing the convicts was not an act of kindness. It was a purely practical measure, rooted in the miasma theory of disease. The surgeon believed that by exposing you and your lice-infested bedding to the sun and fresh air, he could purify you and prevent another outbreak of typhus. The fact that it was also a profound psychological relief was an unintended, and largely unconsidered, side effect. Historians studying surgeons' logs find these airing days described in very clinical terms. Brought the women on deck to air their persons and bedding, a typical entry might read. The weather being fine, there is rarely any mention of the human impact of this simple act. For the surgeon, it was a public health procedure. For you, it is a moment of resurrection. You find a spot on the deck, away from the sailors, and just sit. You lift your face to the sun, feeling its warmth on your grimy skin. It feels like a blessing, a physical touch from a benevolent God. You watch a seagull wheeling high overhead, a symbol of a freedom so absolute you can barely comprehend it. Nancy, the young girl, lies down on the deck and just laughs, a weak but genuine sound of pure joy. Eleanor, the quiet one, is staring out at the horizon, her face still sad, but with a new softness around her eyes. You notice details you would never have seen from below. You see the dolphins, sleek and grey, leaping from the water in the ship's wake. You see the iridescent colors of flying fish as they skip across the waves. The world is full of life and beauty, things you thought you had lost forever. This precious hour on deck is a sensory feast. After months of seeing nothing but darkness and grey, the colors are almost overwhelming. After months of smelling nothing but filth and sickness, the clean scent of the sea is a perfume. After months of hearing nothing but groans and creaks, the sound of the wind in the sails and the cry of gulls is a symphony. The experience is also a source of some odd, and often overlooked, historical anecdotes. Some accounts mention convicts becoming so overwhelmed by the open space that they suffered from a form of vertigo. Others describe women spending the entire time delicizing their clothes and hair with a ferocious intensity, a practical use of their time in the sun. Too soon, the order comes to go back down. That's enough, get below. The return to the hold is a special kind of cruelty. Your eyes, now accustomed to the light, are plunged back into an even deeper seeming darkness. The stench, which you had almost become numb to, hits you with its original foul force. The air feels thick and heavy, impossible to breathe after the clean air above. The descent is a return to the tomb. But something has changed. You carry the memory of the sun with you. The images of blue sky and the sparkling sea is burned into your mind. It's a reminder that there is a world outside of this floating hell, a world of light and errant life. The brief respite has not changed your circumstances, but it has given you something to hold on to in the darkness. It has given you a sliver of hope, a dangerous and fragile thing, but hope nonetheless. The ship continues its relentless journey south. The days of temperate sun and cool breezes are replaced by a suffocating, humid heat that signals your approach to the equator. The sea becomes a sheet of polished steel under a white-hot sky. Life in the hold becomes a sweltering, lethargic ordeal. But the sailors on deck are becoming restless, their usual grumbling replaced by a strange, almost manic energy. They are preparing for a ritual, a tradition as old as the sea itself, the crossing of the line. You hear about it first through the rumor mill, the whispers passed down from the women with connections to the crew. They speak of King Neptune and his court, of a bizarre ceremony of initiation for all those who have never crossed the equator before. To you, in the misery of the hold, it sounds like a child's fantasy, a strange fairy tale. You soon learn it is anything but. The day arrives. You are not brought up on deck to witness the main event, the one for the officers and crew. That is a privilege reserved for them. Instead, King Neptune's court decides to pay a visit to his subjects below. The hatch opens and a grotesque procession descends the ladder. It's a terrifying and absurd sight. A burly bearded sailor, clearly chosen for his size, is dressed as King Neptune. He wears a crown made of rope and shells, a tattered cloak of sailcloth, and his face is smeared with a mixture of tar and flour. In one hand, he wields a trident fashioned from a harpoon and some pieces of wood. He is flanked by his queen, another sailor dressed in a hideous parody of women's clothing, with a mop for a wiggle to tarred coconuts for a bosom. Their court consists of other sailors, their tritons and sea nymphs, their faces and bodies painted with bizarre patterns of soot and grease. They are all roaring drunk. They burst into the hold with a great shout, bringing with them the smell of rum and a chaotic, menacing energy. The women shrink back, huddling in their bunks. This is not a fun, light-hearted ceremony. This is an invasion. It is the sanctioned breakdown of all order, a moment when the crew is given free rein to terrorize and humiliate the most vulnerable people on the ship. Neptune, his voice a drunken bellow, declares that all the suts and doxies in his new domain must pay him tribute. The initiation begins. The Tritons, laughing cruelly, grab the nearest women and drag them from their bunks. The tribute is a ritual of public shaming. First comes the shaving. A bucket of foul, slimy bilge water mixed with soot and grease is brought forward. A terrified woman is held down while one of the Tritons, using a rusty, jagged piece of barrel hoop as a razor, pretends to shave her, smearing the disgusting concoction all over her face and hair. Then comes the christening. The woman is forced to her knees, and Neptune himself pours a bucket of seawater over her head, baptizing her as a true daughter of the sea. Throughout the ordeal, the other sailors are hooting and cheering, their drunken laughter echoing in the confined space. It is a scene of organized chaos and degradation. You and your small group try to make yourselves invisible in the darkest corner of your bunk, but there is no escape. Two of Neptune's court, their faces painted into demonic masks, lurch towards you. They grab Nancy, the young girl who screams in terror. Something inside you snaps. The fear is still there, a cold knot in your stomach, but it's overwhelmed by a sudden protective rage. Before you can even think, you launch yourself out of the bunk, positioning yourself between Nancy and the sailors. Leave her alone. You shout, your voice surprisingly strong. The sailors stop, surprised by your defiance. They look at you, then at each other, and then they burst out laughing. Got a feisty one here. Every one of them slurs, his rum-soaked breath washing over you. She wants to go first, does she? This ceremony of crossing the line is a fascinating subject for maritime historians. On one level, it was a team-building ritual, a way to blow off steam and solidify the bonds of the crew during a long and monotonous voyage. It was a rite of passage that separated the experienced sailors from the greenhorns. However, when it was inflicted upon unwilling participants, like convicts or passengers, it became an instrument of terror and control, a demonstration of the absolute power the crew held over them. The official accounts, like the captain's log, might mention the ceremony in passing, if at all. The true nature of what happened in the convict holds is something that has to be pieced together from more fragmented, personal accounts, where the line between rough fun and outright assault is terrifyingly thin. The two sailors grab you. You struggle, but you are no match for them. They drag you towards Neptune, who is sitting on an overturned barrel as his throne. "I volunteer for the royal shave," he bellows. You are forced to your knees. You see the bucket of black, stinking slime coming towards you. You squeeze your eyes shut, bracing for the humiliation. But then, a sharp voice cuts through the drunken roar. "That's enough." It's the surgeon, standing at the bar door. His face is grim. "You've had your fun. Get out, now." For a moment, there is a tense standoff. Neptune glares at the surgeon, his authority challenged. But the surgeon represents the official power of the ship, and even drunk, the sailors know there are lines they cannot cross. Grumbling, Neptune heaves himself up. The ceremony is concluded, he mutters. The sailors, their fun spoiled, reluctantly release you and begin to shamble back up the ladder, their drunken energy dissipating into sullen resentment. You are left shaking, covered in filth, but you are safe. And Nancy is safe. You stood up. You did something. As you crawl back into your bunk, Nancy grabs your hand in the darkness. She doesn't say anything, but she squeezes it tightly. In the bizarre, terrifying theater of the crossing of the line, you discovered a strength you never knew you possessed. After the equator, the character of the voyage changes again. The oppressive heat gradually lessens, replaced by the sharp, cold winds of the southern latitudes. The ship is making its great run east, sailing through the vast, empty expanse of the Indian Ocean, pushed along by the powerful wind sailors called the Roaring Forties. This is the final, long leg of the journey. The mood in the hold is one of deep, weary resignation. The dramas of the storm and the crossing of the line are over. Now there is only the endless, monotonous routine of the sea. The days are cold, the nights are cold, and the dampness seeps back into your bones. Sickness, particularly the slow, creeping decay of scurvy, is a constant companion. You lose another woman from your hold, not to a dramatic fever, but to a quiet, whimpering death from scurvy-related complications. Her passing is barely noted. You are all too tired. Hope, which had flickered briefly during the airing on deck, has dwindled to a tiny, sputtering ember. The voyage feels infinite. It has been your entire life for so long now that it's hard to remember a time before the creaking wooden, the stench of the hold. London is a dream. The crime you committed is a story about someone else. There is only the ship, the sea, and the waiting. You spend your days huddled with your small group, sharing body warmth, whispering stories to pass the time. Nancy, who has become your shadow, your little sister, asks you to describe London. You tell her about the markets, the noise of the crowds, the taste of a meat pie. The memories feel unreal, like telling a fairy tale. In return, she tells you about the tiny village in Ireland she came from, a place of green fields and stone walls, a place she was forced to leave because of a famine and the theft of a single loaf of bread. Your stories are different, but they end the same way here. One day, a new rumor ripples through the hold, but this one feels different. It doesn't come from a drunken sailor's boast, but from a tangible change in the ship's atmosphere. There's a new energy on deck, a sense of purpose you haven't felt since you left England. The officers are seen taking frequent readings with their sextants. The lookouts in the crow's nest are more alert. The word trickles down land. They expect to sight land soon. At first, you don't dare to believe it. It seems like just another rumor, another false hope to be dashed. But the feeling persists. The ship's surgeon, on one of his brief inspections, seems less grim than usual. Not long now, he mutters, almost to himself. A week. After more than half a year at sea, a week feels like both an eternity and no time at all. A new kind of anxiety takes root in the hold. What will this place be, this New South Wales, this Botany Bay? The old fears, which had been buried under the daily struggle for survival, resurface. Stories of cannibals, of giant spiders, of a barren, sun-scorched wasteland. Is it possible that the hell you are sailing towards is even worse than the one you are leaving behind? Then, the day comes. It begins with a cry from the crow's nest, high above. Land ho. The shout is electric. It passes through the ship like a shockwave. On deck, sailors cheer. Even down in the darkness of the hold, you can feel the shift. The news spreads like wildfire. You are not brought up on deck to see it. You must experience this monumental moment through your other senses. You feel a subtle change in the ship's motion as it alters course, approaching the coast more cautiously. You can't see the land, but you can smell it. After months of smelling nothing but salt, tar, and rot, a new scent drifts down the hatchway. It's a faint, alien smell. It's the scent of eucalyptus, of wood smoke, of dry earth baking in the sun. The exact location of the first landfall for many of these ships is a point of historical interest. While their destination was Port Jackson, modern-day Sydney, their first sight of Australia was often further down the coast. The journals of captains and surgeons often meticulously record this moment, the first glimpse of the long, mysterious coastline of this new world. For them, it was a navigational triumph. For you trapped below, it's an abstract concept, a smell on the wind, a promise and a threat. The ship sails north along the coast for another day or two. The excitement and terror in the hold build to an almost unbearable pitch. You are on the very precipice of a new life, and you have no idea what it will look like. Will you be set free, put in another prison? Will you ever see Nancy or Eleanor again once you and the fragile society you built in the hold is about to be shattered? Finally, the ship's motion changes for the last time. The rhythmic rolling of the open ocean ceases. The anchor chain rattles out, the sound deafening after so long at sea. The ship is still. You have arrived. You are still locked in the hold, but you know. You are floating in the waters of Port Jackson. Outside, under the brilliant sun of a new sky, is a place called Sydney Cove. It is the end of your journey, and the beginning of something else entirely. You huddle in the dark with Nancy, Eleanor, and Sarah, your little family of the sea, waiting for the final hatch to be opened, waiting for your new life, whatever it may be, to begin. The smell of the new land is stronger now, and it smells like a future you never chose. The waiting in Sydney Cove is a unique form of torture. For 2 days, the ship sits at anchor, and you remain locked in the hold. You can hear the sounds of this new world filtering down to you, the strange, screeching calls of exotic birds, the muffled shouts of men on the shore, the lapping of water against the hull in a harbor that feels unnervingly calm after the open ocean. The air that drifts down is warm and smells of dry earth and wood smoke. It's the smell of your future, and it's terrifying. Finally, a day of disembarkation arrives. The hatch is thrown open, and the order is barked down, all convicts on deck. The climb up the ladder is agonizing. Your legs are weak, your body is ravaged by scurvy and malnutrition, and the sudden, brilliant sunlight is physically painful. As you emerge onto the deck, you are blinded, and the scene that slowly resolves itself as your eyes adjust is one of chaotic, raw beginnings. You are anchored in a magnificent natural harbor, a vast expanse of sparkling blue water surrounded by rugged, rocky shores covered in a scrubby, grey-green forest that is unlike any landscape you have ever seen. On the shore of a small cove sits a fledgling settlement, a haphazard collection of crude wooden huts, tents, and a few more substantial brick buildings. This is Sydney. It is not a city. It is not a city. It is a camp, an outpost at the end of the world. But you have little time to take in the scenery. The deck is swarming with people. There are the ship's officers, looking smug and relieved to have completed their duty. There are red-coated Marines, the enforcers of this new society. And there are the locals, the officials, settlers, and military officers who have come aboard to inspect the new arrivals. You and the other women, perhaps 80 or 90 survivors from the 150 or so who were originally herded into the hold, are lined up on the deck. It is a ghastly parade. You are skeletal, filthy, in rags, your skin covered in sores. Many of you can barely stand. You are living skeletons washed up on the shores of a new world. The inspection begins. The colony's principal surgeon, a stern-looking man, walks down the line, peering at each of you. He is not looking at you with compassion. He is assessing you like livestock. He is determining who is healthy enough to be put to work immediately, who needs to be sent to the rudimentary hospital tent to recover or die, and who might be suitable for other purposes. This process of landing and mustering is a critical moment, well documented in colonial archives. Each convict's name is checked against the ship's indent, the official list of prisoners. Your age, crime, and sentence are noted. You are no longer just a body in a dark hold, you are once again a name on a list, a resource to be catalogued and allocated. The academic debate around this moment often focuses on the colony's priorities. Was the primary goal to find able-bodied workers to build the new settlement, or, especially with female convicts, was the goal to address the massive gender imbalance in the colony and provide wives for the male convicts and settlers? The reality was a pragmatic and oft unbrutal mix of both. A woman's fate could be decided in a moment, based on a brief glance from an official. You watch as the men from the colony walk along your line, scrutinizing you. They are looking for domestic servants. A woman who looked relatively healthy and strong might be pointed out. "I'll take that one," an officer might say, and just like that, her fate is sealed. She is assigned as a servant, a virtual slave, to a household in the settlement. But you and many others are deemed too sick, too weak, or simply too wretched, looking to be of immediate use. You are the leftovers, the unassignable. Your heart sinks. What happens to those no one wants? The answer comes soon enough. You, Nancy, and about 30 other women who were not chosen are herded towards the gangplank. You are going ashore. The moment your bare feet touch the soil of New South Wales, it doesn't feel like a liberation. The ground is hot and dusty. The air is thick with flies. The stares of the people on the shore, mostly male convicts and soldiers, are hungry and unnerving. You have not been freed. You have just been moved to a larger, hotter, and more dangerous prison. You are marched through the chaotic, dusty main street of the settlement, past the crude huts and noisy taverns. The male convicts, their faces weathered and hardened by the sun, stop their work to watch you pass. Their comments are lewd direct. You have been brought here, in part, for them. You are a commodity, a long-awaited shipment of fresh goods. Your destination is a large, single-story stone building at the edge of the settlement, surrounded by a high wall. This is the female factory. The name is chillingly accurate. That is a factory that is meant to process and contain you. The heavy wooden gates swing open, and you are pushed inside. The gates swing shut behind you, and the sound is just as final as the one at Newgate, just as final as the bolting of the hold. You look around the dusty, barren courtyard. You have been transported 15,000 miles across the world. You have survived storms, disease, and starvation. And you have ended up here in another prison. You have been weighed, measured, and judged like a piece of meat, and found wanting. You have been delivered to the factory floor. The female factory at Parramatta, a short, hot, dusty walk from where you landed in Sydney Cove, is not what you expected. It's not quite a prison in the way Newgate was, with its dark cells and heavy chains. It's not a factory in the sense of looms and machinery. It's something uniquely, bizarrely Australian. It is a workhouse, a jail. It is a workhouse, a jail, and a marriage bureau, all rolled into one sprawling, chaotic, and sun-baked compound. The institution is divided into 3 classes. You as a new arrival who is not sick enough for the hospital but not desirable enough for immediate assignment as a servant are placed in the 1st class. This is the largest group, comprised of women who are considered capable of work and are, essentially, available for labor, and available for marriage. Your new home is a large, crowded dormitory, a long stone room lined with rough wooden bunks. In this, at least, it is grimly familiar. But here, the air is not the cold, damp refugee of the ship. It's a hot, dry, dust-filled air that smells of unwashed wool, sweat, and the ever-present eucalyptus. The sheer number of women is overwhelming. The factory is notoriously overcrowded, a dumping ground for any female convict who wasn't immediately useful to the colonial administration or private settlers. Your daily life is one of monotonous, back-breaking labor. At sunrise, a bell clangs and you are herded into the workyard. Your primary job is the processing of raw wool. For hours on end, under the harsh Australian sun, you sit on the dusty ground, picking burrs, twigs, and dirt from greasy, foul-smelling fleecy. The lanolin coats your hands, and the tiny, sharp burrs embed themselves in your fingers, causing constant, low-grade pain. Other women are put to work spinning the wool into coarse yarn or weaving it into a rough, scratchy cloth known as Parramatta cloth, which will be used for convict uniforms. It is tedious, mind-numbing work designed not for profit, but to keep you occupied in discipline. The rations are meager, barely enough to sustain you through a day of hard labor. Maize meal porridge, a little salt meat, a piece of coarse bread. Hunger is once again your constant companion. But here, unlike on the ship, there is a clear system of punishment and reward. If you don't meet your daily work quota, your rations are cut. If you are defiant or get into a fight, you are demoted. Demotion means being sent to the second class. These are the troublemakers, the women who have committed secondary offenses within the colony. Their heads are shaved, and they are put to the hardest and most unpleasant work, like breaking rocks. Below them is the dreaded third class or crime class, a prison within the prison. These women are confined to small dog cells, their rations even more pitiful, living in near solitary confinement. The threat of demotion hangs over everyone in the first class, a powerful tool for maintaining order. This system of the female factories is a source of endless fascination for historians. They were a uniquely colonial invention, an attempt by the British authorities to control and reform a population of women they viewed as inherently immoral and degenerate. The official goal was to turn them into docile, hard-working servants and respectable wives. The reality was far more complex. The factories were often mismanaged and rife with corruption. The superintendents were often accused of exploiting the women for their own gain. One of the most peculiar and debated functions of the factory was as a marriage market. The gender imbalance in the early colony was extreme, with far more male convicts and settlers than women. A stable society, the authorities believed, required families, and families required wives. The female factory was the solution. Once a week, on a set day, the gates of the factory would be opened to eligible men settlers, ex-convicts who had served their time, even soldiers who were seeking a wife. The women of the first class would be lined up in the courtyard for inspection. It is exactly as humiliating as it sounds. The men would walk down the line, much like the officials on the ship, scrutinizing the women. They were looking for someone healthy, strong, perhaps even comely. A man would make his choice, point to a woman, and if she agreed, and agreement was a very relative term, they would be brought before the chaplain and married, often in a group ceremony with a dozen other couples. For the woman, marriage was the only realistic way out of the factory. It meant a roof over her head, better food, and a chance at a life outside the walls. But it was a terrifying gamble. You had no idea who this man was, his temperament, his history. You were tying yourself to a complete stranger, placing your entire future in his hands, based on a 5-minute inspection in a dusty courtyard. You watched these courting days with a mixture of fear and a strange, detached curiosity. You see women eagerly step forward, desperate freeing the known misery of the factory to the unknown risks of a stranger's home. You, Nancy, and Eleanor stick together, trying to remain inconspicuous. The idea of being chosen like a prize cow at a fair is a humiliation you are not yet desperate enough to endure. You focus on your work, on surviving day to day, on preserving the small, fragile family you've formed on the ocean. But you know with a grim certainty that this cannot last. Sooner or later you will have to make a choice, or a choice will be made for you. Life inside the factory walls quickly teaches you a new set of survival skills adapted to the unique pressures of this sun-scorched purgatory. The rules you learn it in Newgate and on the ship are a good foundation, but the colony has its own distinct brand of desperation and opportunity. The first rule is that everything is a commodity. Your daily ration of bread can be traded for a needle and thread, a priceless treasure that allows you to mend your ragged clothes. A portion of your salt meat might buy you a better spot in the dormitory, away from the leaking roof. The women have created a complex and vibrant black market, a secret economy that operates right under the noses of the overseers. Information is also a currency. Knowing which overseer is lenient, which jobs are slightly less back-breaking, or which settler looking for a wife has a reputation for cruelty, this knowledge is power. You learn to read the landscape of power within the factory. The superintendent and his wife are the absolute monarchs, but the matrons who run the dormitories and workrooms are the real day-to-day rulers. Gaining their favor can mean an extra blanket or being overlooked for a minor infraction. Incurring their wrath can mean being sent to the rock-breaking gangs of the second class. You learn to be subservient, to keep your eyes down, to work hard, and to never, ever draw unnecessary attention to yourself. But there is another, more dangerous path to survival, one that mirrors the grim economy of the ship. The factory is not a sealed fortress. There are guards, overseers, delivery men bringing supplies. And where there are men with a little power and women with none, transactions occur. A woman might grant favors to a guard in exchange for a loaf of fresh bread, a bottle of rum smuggled from the nearby town, or even a promise to put in a good word for her with the superintendent. This unofficial prostitution is a constant, whispered presence. It's a source of bitter conflict and jealousy. The women who participate are scorned by some as immoral, but they are also envied for the small luxuries they obtain. For you, it's a line you will not cross. You have guarded the ownership of your own body through the hell of the voyage, and you are not willing to sell it now for a few extra comforts. You, Nancy, and Eleanor from a tight, protective unit, warning each other away from predatory guards and shunning the women who try to draw you into that world. Your poverty is a kind of shield, your refusal is also of quiet, stubborn pride. The biggest difference between this new world and the old is the concept of a future. In Newgate and on the ship, survival was the only goal. There was no tomorrow, only the endless, miserable present. But here in the colony, there is a tangible path out. The ultimate prize is a ticket of leave. You hear the older convicts talking about it in hushed, reverent tones. A ticket of leave is a form of parole. If you serve a certain portion of your sentence, typically for years of a 7-year sentence, and maintain a record of good behavior, you can apply for one. A ticket of leave doesn't grant you a full pardon, but it allows you to leave the factory, to seek your own employment, to own property, and to live as a semi-free person within a designated district. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the reason to endure the back-breaking work, the hunger, the humiliation. Every day you avoid trouble, every day you meet your work quota, you are one day closer to that ticket. It becomes your holy grail. The historical reality of the ticket of leave system is complex. Historians still debate its effectiveness as a tool of reform. Was it a genuinely enlightened policy that encouraged good behavior and aided rehabilitation, or was it simply a pragmatic way for an underfunded and understaffed colonial administration to offset the cost of feeding and housing convicts? It was likely both, and it released a much-needed workforce into the colonial economy. For the authorities, it was a cost-effective management tool. For you, it is the most beautiful phrase in the English language. To get that ticket, you must be a model prisoner. This means navigating the treacherous social world of the factory with extreme care. Fights are common, born of frustration, hunger, and the constant friction of too many desperate women crammed together. A single fight, if witnessed by a matron, could mean a black mark on your record, pushing your dream of a ticket of leave further away. You learn to walk away from insults, to de-escalate conflicts, to swallow your anger. You become a master of diplomacy in a world where a wrong word can cost you years of your life. You, Nancy, and Eleanor become each other's keepers of the flame. When Nancy's fiery Irish temper threatens to get her in trouble, you and Eleanor calm her down. When Eleanor sinks into a deep melancholy, you and Nancy force her to eat, to talk, to keep going. You remind each other what you are working for. You are not just surviving anymore. You are building a future, one day at a time, one piece of cleaned fleece at a time. The new survival law is no longer just about enduring the present, but about strategically, carefully, and quietly earning your way back into the human race. The years in the female factory grind on, marked not by calendars, but by the changing seasons, the scorching heat of summer that makes the workyard feel like a furnace, and the mild, wet winters where a damp chill permeates the stoned dormitories. You become harder, Lena. The sun has baked your skin a darker shade, and your hands are permanently calloused from the endless work with the wool. You are a different person from the terrified girl who was herded through the gates. You are a survivor, a strategist, a keeper of a distant dream. The dream has a name: ticket of leave. It is the focus of your every action. You have kept your record clean. For years have passed since you first set foot in the colony. You, along with Eleanor, are now eligible to apply. Nancy, who was younger and had a shorter sentence to begin with, has another year to wait, a fact that causes her both joy for you and a quiet anxiety for herself. The application process is another piece of bureaucratic theatre. You are brought before the superintendent of the factory and a local magistrate. They sit behind a heavy wooden desk, looking stern and imposing. Your entire colonial history, a short but brutal document, is laid out before them. It notes your original crime, your sentence, your conduct on the ship as recorded by the surgeon, and a detailed report of your behavior in the factory. The superintendent asks you a series of questions. Have you been obedient to the matrons? Have you fulfilled your work quotas? Have you attended divine service on Sundays? You answer yes, sir, to everything, your eyes downcast. It is a performance of deference, of penitence. You have to show them that you have been reformed, that you are no longer the wicked creature who stole a bolt of cloth, but a humble, hard-working woman ready to become a useful member of society. You wait for weeks for the decision. It is an agonizing period of uncertainty. Every day, you watch the gate, hoping for the notice to be posted. You see other women receive their tickets, their faces breaking into disbelief and joy as they pack their meager belongings and walk out into the world. You also see women whose applications are denied, their faces crumbling in devastation as they are condemned to another year within the walls. The reasons for denial are often vague and arbitrary, not yet deemed sufficiently reformed. Then, one afternoon, the list is posted. You undone or rush to it, your heart's pounding. You scan the names, your finger tracing down the page, and there it is, your name, and below it, Eleanor S. You have been granted your tickets of leave. A wave of emotion so powerful it almost knocks you off your feet washes over you. It's not just joy. It's disbelief, relief, and a profound, bone-deep weariness, as if a great weight you've been carrying for years has finally been lifted. You and Eleanor cling to each other, laughing and crying at the same time. Nancy rushes up and hugs you both, her happiness for you tinged with the sadness of being left behind. You go, she whispers fiercely. You make a life. I'll be right behind you. You promise to wait for her. The ticket itself is a simple printed document. It states your name, your ship, and the conditions of your parole. You are not completely free. You cannot leave your designated district, in your case, the area around Parramatta, without a pass. You must report to the magistrate regularly. You must attend church. And if you commit any crime, your ticket will be revoked, and you will be sent back to the factory, or worse, to a penal settlement for repeat offenders. This conditional freedom is a key feature of the transportation system, and one that historians analyze closely. It was a clever system of social control. By granting this partial liberty, the government created a large, mobile, and cheap labor force that was still firmly under its thumb. The ticket of leave holder was in a precarious position, always aware that a misstep could land them back in bondage. It was a powerful incentive to be a compliant and productive citizen. The document is also the subject of a strange, almost fetishistic archival interest. These flimsy pieces of paper are some of the most sought-after records for genealogists tracing their convict ancestors. They are tangible proof of a life remade, the first step on the journey from convict to colonist. For you, it is the most precious object you have ever owned. You are given a new set of basic clothes, a coarse dress, a pair of rough shoes, and a final week's ration of food. You say your goodbyes. The farewell with Nancy is the hardest. You have been through everything together. You promise to find work nearby, to save what you can, to be there for her when she gets out. Then you and Eleanor walk towards the gate. The same gate you worshipped through 4 years ago. This time, the guard swings it open for you. You step outside. The air is the same, but everything is different. You are no longer an inmate. You are a woman with a ticket of leave. You are free. Ish. You stand there for a moment, blinking in the bright light, the dusty road of the colony stretching out before you. For the first time in years, the path is your own to choose. Freedom, even the conditional, ticket of leave version, is disorienting. The world outside the factory walls is loud, chaotic, and overwhelmingly male. The small settlement of Parramatta is a frontier town, a recollection of dusty streets, rough-hewn ovens, small farms, and the grand houses of the colonial officials and wealthy settlers. For the first time in years, you are responsible for yourself. You need to find food, shelter, and work. The thought is both exhilarating and terrifying. You Undelenor pool your meager resources. You have a few shillings saved from extra work, a spare blanket, and your precious tickets. Your first priority is a place to live. You find a room to rent in the back of a small cottage owned by a gruff ex-convict who now runs a bakery. It's tiny, little more than a closet with 2 straw pallets, but it is yours. The privacy, after years of living in crowded dormitories, feels like an unimaginable luxury. The next challenge is work. As ticket of leave women, you are in high demand as domestic servants. Laundresses, seamstresses, cooks, and general housekeepers are desperately needed. You Undelenor present yourselves at the homes of local settlers. It's a nerve-wracking experience, another form of inspection. The lady of the house looks you over, asks about your skills, and scrutinizes your ticket. Your convict past is a permanent stain, a fact you can never escape. Eleanor, who is older and has a quiet, dignified manner, is quickly hired as a housekeeper for the local chaplain's family. You find work as a laundress for a military officer. The work is hard, your days spent over a steaming tub of soapy water, your hands are off from scrubbing. But at the end of the week, you are paid a wage. You hold the coins in your hand, the first money you have earned in years. It feels solid, real. You use it to buy fresh bread from your landlord, a piece of cheese, an apple. The simple act of buying your own food, of choosing what to eat, is a profound declaration of your newfound independence. But, as you begin to build this fragile new life, you become acutely aware of the social pressures of the colony. A single woman, especially a former convict, is in a precarious and vulnerable position. You are constantly subjected to the unwanted advances of men soldiers, settlers, and other convicts. Your status as an immersive affords you some legal protection, but in practice, a woman's word rarely holds up against a man. It becomes clear that the surest path to security and to a more stable place in society is through marriage. The colonial government actively encouraged it. Married women were seen as a civilizing influence, a stabilizing force in a rough-and-tumble society. For a woman, a husband, even a less than ideal one, offered protection, both physical and social. The choice of a partner, however, is fraught with peril. The pool of eligible men consists largely of ex-convicts who, like you, are trying to build a new life, or soldiers and free settlers looking to establish a homestead. Many are good, hard-working men. Many are not. Stories abound of women who married only to find themselves trapped with a drunkard, a brute, or a lazy good-for-nothing who exploited their labor. This is a central theme for historians studying the social development of Australia. The nature of these early colonial marriages. Were they transnational arrangements, pragmatic alliances for survival and social advancement, or was there room for affection, for genuine partnership? The records suggest it was a spectrum. Some were undoubtedly marriages of convenience, but many convict couples, bound by a shared past and a common hope for the future, formed deep and lasting bonds, creating dynasties that would shape the future of the nation. You and Eleanor discuss it in the quiet of your small room at night. She is not interested. She is content with her quiet life, her independence, and her memories, but you are younger. You see women your age starting families, building homes. You feel a longing for a security that goes beyond a weekly wage. One day, at the market, you meet a man. His name is Thomas. He is a ticket of leave man like you, transported for his role in a political protest in England. He is a stonemason, a quiet, steady man with kind eyes and hands that are as calloused as your own. He doesn't have the leering, predatory gaze of so many other men. He talks to you with respect. He asks about your journey, and he listens. He begins to court you, a formal and respectful process. He walks you home from church. He brings you a small posy of wildflowers. He tells you about his dream to serve out his time, get his own plot of land, and build a small farm. He asks you if you would be willing to share that dream with him. It is a monumental decision. It is not a marriage of sweeping romance, but one of sober, careful consideration. You see in him a partner, a fellow survivor. You share a chance to build something that is truly your own. You have escaped the forced choice of the factory's marriage market, and now you are able to make a choice for yourself. After weeks of thought, you say yes. You and Thomas are married by the same chaplain Eleanor works for. The ceremony is simple. You, Eleanor, Nancy, who gets a special pass to leave the factory for the day, and a friend of Thomas's are the only ones there. As you stand there, in a clean, mended dress, beside this quiet, decent man, you feel a sense of peace you haven't felt since you were a child. This is not the end of your struggles. It is the beginning of a new chapter. A partnership forged in the harsh soil of a new land, a deliberate step towards putting down roots. Married life is a new kind of hard work. You and Thomas pool your wages, saving every spare shilling. Your dream of a small farm is a distant, shimmering goal that requires relentless toil and frugal living. You leave your job as a laundress and join Thomas in his work, not as a stonemason, but as a labourer, clearing land for new constructions. The work is punishingly physical, but you do it together, side by side under the Australian sun. You are partners in every sense of the word. Your small rented room is replaced by a slightly larger, but still very basic wooden hut on the edge of town. It's just one room, with a packed hearth floor and a simple hearth for cooking, but you make it a home. You plant a small vegetable garden, a patch of green that is a source of both food and immense pride. You finally get to see Nancy released from the factory, and she comes to live with you and Thomas for a time. A beloved sister, before finding work and a life of her own. Eleanor remains your closest friend, a steady, calm presence in your life. The bonds forged in the darkness of the ship have proven stronger than time and distance. Then your life is turned upside down by a discovery that is both terrifying and wonderful. You are pregnant. In the 18th and 19th centuries, pregnancy and childbirth were perilous for all women, rich or poor. But for a woman in your position, in a remote colony with limited medical facilities, it was a life-threatening event. There are no grand hospitals, no skilled physicians readily available for a woman of your class. Childbirth is a domestic affair, managed at home with the help of a local midwife, who is often just another experienced woman from the community. The fear is immense. You have seen women in the colony die from infections, from hemorrhage, from complications that would be easily treatable in a modern world. Your own body, which has already endured so much starvation, disease, hard labor, is about to be put through the ultimate test. But alongside the fear is a fierce, protective joy. This child growing inside you is not a convict. This child will be a native of this new land, unbound by the chains of the past that still symbolically hang on you and Thomas. This child represents a future you never dared to imagine. It is the ultimate act of defiance against the system that tried to break you. You were sent here as human refuse, a piece of social garbage to be discarded. But you are about to become a creator, a mother, the root of a new family tree. The experience of convict mothers is a deeply poignant and often overlooked aspect of Australian history. These women faced incredible hardships. Many had to continue their assigned labor well into their pregnancies. And if they were still serving their sentence and did not have a supportive partner, they faced the constant threat of having their child taken from them and placed in the colonial orphanage. The very existence of these children was a challenge to the tidy, orderly plans of the colonial administration. Historians debate the official attitude towards convict pregnancies. On one hand, the authorities wanted to grow the population of the colony. On the other, they often viewed the children of immoral convict women with suspicion, as if they would inherit their mother's criminal taint. Yet, the love and fierce devotion these mothers had for their children, as evidenced in letters and court records, is a powerful testament to their resilience. Your pregnancy is a community affair. Eleanor, with her calm wisdom, becomes your guide. Nancy, ever practical, helps you prepare, sewing baby clothes from scraps of soft linen. Thomas is a rock. He works even harder, saving for the day the baby comes. He treats you with a gentle reverence that brings tears to your eyes. When the time comes, it is as terrifying as you feared. The labor is long and agonizing. It happens in your small hut, with Eleanor and a local midwife by your side. But you are not alone in a dark hold or a sterile factory. You are in your own home, surrounded by people who love you. And then, after hours of struggle, you hear the thin, wailing cry of a newborn baby. It is a boy. The midwife cleans him and places him in your arms. He is tiny, perfect, and alive. You look at his small, scrunched-up face, and the years of suffering, the trial, Newgate, the ship, the factory all seem to fade into the background. They were just the long, dark road that led you to this moment. You look up at Thomas, who is standing by the bed, his face a mixture of and exhaustion. You have done it. You have taken a sentence of exile and turned it into a new beginning. This child is your anchor in this new world. He is your reason, your purpose, your victory. He is a native son of the Australian soil, born of a mother who crossed the world in chains and a father who dared to dream of freedom. In this small, dusty hut, a new Australian family has just been born. The years spool out, each one woven with the threads of hard work, small joys, and the steady, quiet growth of your family. Your son, James, is followed by a daughter, Sarah. Your life revolves around them, around the rhythm of seasons on your own small patch of land. After years of relentless saving, you and Thomas finally achieve your dream. You purchase a grant of 30 acres a few miles from Parramatta. It's not prime land, it's rocky and covered in the stubborn, grey-green bush, but it is yours. You build your own house. It's a slow, painstaking process. Thomas, with his stonemason skill, lays the foundations and builds a sturdy hearth and chimney. You, with the children helping by getting underfoot, mix the mud and straw for the walls and learn to thatch a roof. The house is small and simple, but every stone and every beam is a testament to your own labor. It is your fortress, your sanctuary. Life is a constant struggle against the elements of this new land. You battle droughts that turn your vegetable garden to dust, and sudden torrential rains that threaten to wash it all away. You learn the strange seasons of this upside-down world, where Christmas is a day of sweltering heat. You learn which native timbers are best for building, and which ones burn hottest in your hearth. You are no longer an English woman in exile, you are becoming an Australian. One day a letter arrives. It has travelled for months on a ship, a fragile link to the world you left behind. It is from a distant cousin in London informing you that your mother passed away years ago. The news is old, the grief distant, yet it stirs something in you. You walk to the top of the small hill on your property and look out over the vast, rolling landscape of your new home. You think of the girl you were, the one who stole a bolt of cloth out of hunger. She seems like a complete stranger to you now, a ghost from another life. The ties to your old world have been severed completely. This is your home now. There is no going back. Your full sentence is eventually served. You and Thomas receive your certificates of freedom. These are more significant than the tickets of leave. They are official documents declaring that your debt to the Crown has been paid in full. You are now free citizens of the British Empire, with all the rights that entails. You can travel anywhere, own land without restriction, and your children will never bear the stain of your convict past. The historical significance of this moment of emancipation is huge. This was the process by which a penal colony transformed into a settler society. The emancipists, the former convicts, came to form the backbone of the growing colony. They were the farmers, the artisans, the shopkeepers, the mothers and fathers of the first generation of freeborn Australians. Their journey from criminals to colonists is the foundational story of the nation. There was, however, intense social friction. The exclusives, the free settlers, military officers, and administrators who saw themselves as the colonial elite often looked down upon the emancipists. They tried to exclude them from juries, from positions of authority, from polite society. This created a deep social divide that would define colonial politics for decades. Historians still debate the extent and impact of this convict stain. Was it a permanent barrier, or did the practical realities of a new, growing society eventually render it irrelevant for many, like you? The answer lay in carving out your own world, your own community, where your past was known but your present worth was what mattered. You don't concern yourself much with the high politics of Sydney. Your world is your farm, your family, your small community of fellow immersive-ists. You watch your children grow. They are hardy and resourceful with the accent of this new land on their tongues. They know nothing of London's grimy streets or the horrors of a ship's hold. Their world is one of wide open spaces, bright sunshine, and the smell of eucalyptus. One evening, you are sitting on the porch of the house you built, watching the sun set. The sky is ablaze with colors, pinks, oranges, and deep purples that you never saw in the smoggy skies of England. Thomas is beside you, his hand resting on yours. Your children are chasing each other in the yard, their laughter echoing in the quiet evening air. You look at your life, the neat little farm, the sturdy house, the healthy children, the quiet man by your side. None of it was given to you. Every single piece of it was earned, fought for, and built from the ashes of a life that was supposed to be over. The journey was a descent into hell, but you have somehow, against all odds, clawed your way out and built a small piece of paradise on the other side. The memories of the ship are still there, a collection of scars deep in your soul, but they no longer have power over you. They are just a story you will one day tell your grandchildren. A story of a long, terrible voyage that ended, impossibly, at home. Years later, you are a grandmother. Your hair is grey, your face is a map of wrinkles carved by sun and time, but your eyes are clear and sharp. You sit in a rocking chair on the veranda of your farmhouse, a matriarch presiding over a sprawling, noisy clan. Your son, James, married a girl from a neighbouring farm, the daughter of another immersive family. Your daughter, Sarah, married a free settler, a young man who came to Australia seeking opportunity, not fleeing justice. The old social divides are slowly starting to blur, healed by love and the shared project of building a new nation. Your farm has prospered. The 30 acres have grown to 100. The small wattle and daub hut has been replaced by a handsome stone farmhouse, built by your son and your husband before he passed. His absence is a quiet take, but his presence is everywhere, in the solid walls of the house, in the neat rows of the orchard he planted, in the faces of his grandchildren. You are a figure of respect, almost of legend, in your community. You are one of the first fleeters, or at least from that first generation. You are a pioneer. The young people, your grandchildren and their friends, sometimes ask you to tell the story of the old country, and the journey out. When you tell it, it sounds like a dark fairy tale. You speak of a city called London, choked with smoke and fog. You describe a great ship with towering masts, a floating prison that smelled of sickness and despair. You talk of storms that threatened to swallow the world, of a terrifying sickness that swept through the darkness, of seeing the sun for the first time in months. The children listen, their eyes wide. They cannot comprehend it. Their reality is this vast, sun-drenched land. The horrors you describe are as alien to them as a story of dragons and goblins. This is the great success of the transportation system, from the government's perspective. It didn't just remove criminals from Britain, it created a new society so far removed, so completely different, that the experiences of the founding generation became almost mythical to their descendants. The trauma of the passage was a fire that forged a new identity, but the ashes were left an ocean away. You are, in a sense, one of Australia's unwilling founding mothers. You and the thousands of other women like you, who were swept from the slums and streets of Britain and Ireland, were not sent here to build an empire. You were sent here to be forgotten. You were the refuse, the social problem to be disposed of. But you refused to be discarded. You endured. You adapted. You adapted. You worked. You loved. You loved. You suffered, and you raised families. You laid the families, not with grand plans or political ambition, but with the simple, stubborn, human desire to live, and to see your children live better than you did. The historical debate over the legacy of these women is rich and ongoing. For a long time, they were either ignored in the grand narrative of Australian history or maligned as a population of whores and criminals, a stain on the nation's origins. But in recent decades, historians, many of them female, have reclaimed these stories. They are now viewed not as passive victims, but as active agents in their own survival. They were resilient, resourceful, and courageous. They navigated a brutal system with intelligence and grit. They are no longer the unwilling mothers, they are recognized as the indispensable matriarchs of a nation. You don't think in such grand terms. You just know your own story. You look at your granddaughter, who has your eyes sitting at your feet. She is learning to read, something you never had the chance to do. She will have choices you never dreamed of. One afternoon, a traveling painter comes through the district, offering to do portraits for the more prosperous families. Your son insists on having one made of you. Use it for him, feeling a little foolish, dressed in your best dark dress, your gnarled hands resting in your lap. He paints you as you are an old woman, weathered and strong, with a lifetime of stories in your gaze. That portrait will hang in your family's farmhouse for 100 years. Long after you are gone, your great-great-grandchildren will look at it and wonder about you. They will know the basic facts of your story, that you were a convict, that you came on a ship, that you started the farm. But they will never truly know the terror of the hold, the taste of the biscuit, the joy of that first breath of fresh air on deck, or the fierce, desperate love you felt for the children who would be born free. You are the source of their river, a deep and dark spring they can never fully fathom. You have become a beginning, and that, perhaps, is the most profound and unexpected transformation of all. The system was designed to be an end, but you turned it into a genesis. The story is over now. The rocking chair on the veranda is still. The cicadas hum their steady, sleepy rhythm in the warm twilight. The sharp edges of the past have softened, blurring into the golden haze of memory. You can feel the journey's end, not as a sudden stop, but as a gentle settling, like dust mowed to rest in a sunbeam. The echoes of the crashing waves, the clanking chains, and the whispered fears have faded, replaced by a deep and profound quiet. You are no longer on the ship, no longer in the factory. You are somewhere peaceful, somewhere safe. The hard wooden bunk has transformed into a soft, welcoming bed. The damp, cold air of the hold has been replaced by a gentle breeze that carries the scent of night-blooming jasmine and clean earth. There is no hunger here, only a sense of deep contentment. There is no fear, only a feeling of release. Your body feels light, the weight of the chains, the burden of memory, the long ache of survival, it is all dissolved. You can feel yourself drifting, not on a dark and menacing ocean, but on a calm, slow-moving river, bathed in the soft, silvery light of the moon. The faces of Nancy, Eleanor, and Thomas appear not as painful memories, but as gentle, smiling companions on the shore, waving you on. The journey wasn't just about reaching a destination, it was about finding this peace at the very end of it all. Let the gentle current carry you now. Let the soft background hum of the world lull you deeper. There are no more storms to endure. There is only rest. The end of the article. Good night.